Okay, so welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Rafi Shulman, and I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. I want to welcome you all to tonight's webinar. We're doing things a little different. If you've been in some of our webinars before, usually we have one webinar with presenters, and we go through it. It usually takes about an hour. We decided to change things up a little bit. This time we're breaking it down into 6 different sessions, 6 different topics, talking about 6 different things to really give you more of a selection of topics and more information to go through. What I'd like to do is just introduce my partner. One second, I'm just going to bring her here on board. Laura Itzhaki. She's going to join us and she's going to help me moderate it. We have over 160 people from around the world, and it's always so inspiring to me to see people that are here, whether it's to make Aliyah, people that are living here already, you want to buy, you want to rent. It's just great to have you here, and hopefully you will find this webinar informative. We'll find the good information and it will be inspiring. I just want to mention you can also come and go as you please. We're going to do one long webinar, so if the next topic is not something that you're interested in, you can leave and come back. It's really kind of a free for all, so feel free to do that. Just a few
Hi,
quick things. We are
everyone.
going to be recording it, so if you have to leave early, if you can't sit through all the sessions, we will record it. We'll send out an email within a couple of days to everybody so you can watch it at your convenience, and also so that you can share with other people. We also will do Q&A at the end of each session. So at the end of each 30-minute session, we'll do a Q&A session, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. Just please recognize that we can't get to everybody's questions in this webinar. It's just something that we don't have enough time for it. So I really encourage you to reach out to us, to reach out to the different presenters. Let's schedule one-on-one conversations so we can really figure out what your goals are, what your objectives, what your concerns are, so that we can help you. And then the last thing is we will have contact information for all of the presenters throughout the presentation. So you'll be able to reach out to them directly. I just want to take a moment and just introduce you all to my partner, Laura. So Laura, it's good to see you on board.
Hi, sorry it took me a few minutes to get on. I apologize. We would love to hear from everyone, see where you're from. If you want to write in the Q&A where you're from, your names, that would be great. Welcome. We look forward to having everyone on. It's a new and exciting webinar with these sessions, and everyone enjoy. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. So I just want to, for those of you who are not familiar with Olim Advisors, I just want to very briefly explain to you who we are and why we're doing this webinars, and then we'll dive right into the content. So we started Olim Advisors back in 2016 because we recognized that making Aliyah and buying a home in Israel are overwhelming experiences. A lot of people that are outside of Israel, whether it's US, Canada, UK, South Africa, really anywhere in the world, if they start thinking about it, a lot of times they feel that they don't know where to begin. They don't know how to make decisions. And unfortunately, a lot of people just give up and say, you know what, this is just not for me, and I'm not going to move forward. And so we really wanted to change that. We wanted to help people. And so we started a very personalized, customized service where we actually pair you up with your own dedicated advisor that will guide you through the entire process. So if you're thinking about making Aliyah now, or maybe down the road, you will have an advisor who will help you with the pre-Aliyah decisions, like finding communities, schools, homes. And then we'll deal with the biggest part of the process, which is the Israeli bureaucracy once you get here. And then the last thing is providing you ongoing support so that you have somebody to turn to when you have questions. And the same thing applies to people who want to buy a property in Israel. We will help you find communities, projects, developers. We will introduce you to our network of real estate professionals so that you are well taken care of. And in essence, we will do the same thing. We will guide you through the entire process and make sure that you're taken care of. So if you're thinking about making Aliyah, or if you're thinking about buying a home in Israel, don't do it alone. Reach out to us and let us help you, and let's go through these journeys together. Okay, so with that, I'd like to start the first session, which is just general Aliyah and real estate tips that I'd like to share with you. So the first topic that I'm going to talk about is making Aliyah, and more specifically, people who fall into the age group of 50 years and older. It could be semi-retired, maybe fully retired, but people in this age bracket have different concerns, and for example, people who have younger kids and younger families. So there's a few things to keep in mind, a few challenges, a few concerns that you should be aware of and that you should start thinking about. The first one is financial, right? So you want to make sure that you know what the cost of living is in Israel. You want to know what you should do with your investments if you have investments. You really want to think through the financial part of moving to Israel. The second part is healthcare. You want to make sure that you are, in essence, covered, that you have the right insurance, you have the right medicine. God forbid you need something. You want to make sure that you understand the medical system in Israel and that you know who to turn to. And the last thing, the last challenge, the last concern that a lot of people think about is, where do you want to live? And the question is, for a lot of people, it's really an opportunity to start a new chapter in your life, right? So maybe you've been living in a city all your life, and now you want to live in the hills. Maybe you want to live by the beach. So think about what you want, and then also think about where in Israel you want to locate, so you want to live. So these are really three main challenges. And so I have a few tips, a few pieces of advice to address each one. So when it comes to financial, the first thing that you want to do is you want to budget. You want to have a general sense of what your cost of living is going to be. It doesn't have to be to the exact dollar. It doesn't have to be to the exact shekel, but you want to have a sense of what it's going to cost, because the last thing you want to do is come to Israel and feel the financial stress. So get a sense, and we can help you with this. If you want us to help you figure out the budget, we can help you do that. And once you have a budget, then you want to look at the expenses, right? Because a big part of having this financial freedom and not having the financial stress is keeping your expenses and living within your means. So there's a number of ways to lower your expenses, whether it's the one-time Aliyah expenses or ongoing monthly expenses that you can lower, that can help you live within your means and make sure that your budget looks good. The other big factor, of course, is buying versus renting, and that has a huge impact on your budget. If you're going to buy, you have the down payment, the large down payment, and then you also have the monthly mortgage payments, which often are more than your monthly rent. So that's a factor that you need to think about when you're thinking about making Aliyah. And the last thing is, so we talked about expenses. There's also a way to work the other side of the equation, which is the income. Even if you're retired, even if you're semi-retired, there are a lot of opportunities here, a lot of companies that are looking for people that have the experience, people that have the contacts, and it's a way for you to keep busy, to be productive, and also to make some extra money that you can then use to travel, go on vacations, to provide for your kids and grandkids. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind. The next thing is healthcare, right? And this is so important. You want to make sure that you're picking the right HMO, or in Hebrew it's called Kupat Cholim. So there's 4 HMOs or 4 Kupot. You want to pick the right one, and it really depends on where you live and what language you speak. And you want to make sure that the Kupa has the adequate coverage in the communities, in the cities that you're looking to move to. Then, if you have special medical needs, you want to find specialists, and that's something you can even do before you make Aliyah. You want to network and you want to do the research to make sure that you have doctors. And the last thing is, be aware that it's social medicine, and while the level of care here is great, some things do take time, and you could have to wait for a few weeks, a few months even, to get an appointment, especially if it's in a specialist. So you want to plan in advance and not wait until the last moment. And the last point is, where do you want to live, right? And there's an exercise, there's a suggestion that I give to people, which is to close your eyes for a few minutes and try and picture what you see, or what you'd like to see when you come out of your apartment. Do you want to see buses and stores and schools, or do you want to see greenery? Do you want to see the beach? Do you want to be able to get around easily, or do you need to have a car? These are all things that you should take into account, because, like I said before, it's really an opportunity for you to reinvent your life, and especially for people who want to live by the beach. There's so many beautiful beach cities and communities that you can take advantage of. The other thing, of course, to consider are practical factors. Do you need to be near your family, near your kids, grandkids? What does transportation look like? Is the community hilly or flat? What's the topography? So there are a lot of practical factors as well that should go into this decision. So this, of course, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot more factors that you have to think about and decisions to make, and I'll gladly sit down with you and figure it out together. So feel free to reach out to me. The next kind of the other end of the spectrum are families with young kids, and it's a completely different ball game, a different process, a different experience for them. And so there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, families are coming with much older children, right? It used to be that if your child was older than 10, people would discourage you from coming. Now, families are coming with kids who are 13, 14, 15, 16. Why? Because there's a lot more programs, there's a lot more support, there's a lot more set up for children to succeed in school, to be prepared for the Bagriyot, the matriculation exams. So just keep it in mind. If you're thinking about making Aliyah and you have older kids, it's definitely something that is doable. The other thing I'd recommend is learn Hebrew before you get here. So you can go through a formal Ulpan program, or you can go online to watch movies, listen to music, read websites, watch the news. There's a lot of things that you can do. And the more Hebrew you have, even if it's a basic Hebrew, it will make such a big difference on your klita, on your adjustment. The next thing to keep in mind is that schools here are different for the better and for the worse. And what you have to remember is that most kids do well. They start in elementary school, they move on to middle school, move on to high school, then they go into the army or Shirat Leumi, university. And as you know, Israel has a fairly successful corporate world. There's a fairly successful medical industry here. And so inevitably, kids will be okay. Just realize that the schools here are different, and that's okay. The other thing is that you should advocate for kids because the school classes here are bigger. You might have 30, 35 kids in a class. There's not as much support, so maybe there's only one teacher per class instead of two. And so what you want to do is you want to be involved. You want to be in touch with the administrators, with the teachers. You want to let them know that you're keeping an eye on what's going on, and inevitably, kids who have their parents involved tend to get the attention that they need, and your kid will do just fine. And the last point is really probably the most important one, and it really applies to anyone who's thinking about making Aliyah, is that your mindset has such a huge impact on the experience, right? It's going to be different, it's going to be challenging, and I'm the first one to admit that it's not easy to make Aliyah. But if you come with a positive mindset and recognize that the first few days, the first few weeks, the first few months might be challenging, but it will get easier and easier. And if you focus on the beauty and the positive of what Israel has to offer, then you will have a much more positive experience. Your children will feed off of this and have a much more positive experience. So these are things that you definitely should keep in mind if you're thinking about making Aliyah. And the third point that I want to touch upon is buying a home in Israel, right? So for those of you who live in Israel already, or maybe you're thinking about just buying a home in Israel but not looking to make Aliyah, there's a few challenges and concerns I want to touch upon and a few pieces of advice. So the first thing is think about where you want to live. Like we just talked about, you have a lot of options, right? So you really want to think through what community, what city you want to move to. Then the next thing that we talked about is to buy. Do you want to buy? Do you want to rent? Short term, long term, do you want to rent and then buy? There's a lot of options and pros and cons to both. The next thing is, if you are going to look into buy, what's the buying process like? It's very different from the buying process in the States and UK and South Africa, Australia, and other countries around the world. So you need to become familiar with that. And the last point, probably the most important one, is who should you trust? Who can you trust as you go through the process? So let's tackle each one and a few pieces of advice. So when it comes to where you want to move to, my recommendation is that you create a list of preferences and prioritize. So, for example, do you want to have an Anglo community, a religious community, a mixed community, a secular community? Do you want a big city, a small city? Do you want a yishuv? All of these are choices, all of these are options. And I think it's important that you list them. And you can have a long list. You can have 8 things, 9 things, 10 things. That's okay. Try and prioritize it because in all likelihood, when you start looking for the community, you're not going to find something that checks all the boxes. So if you get something that's 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, that's pretty good. And in all likelihood, you will be happy there as well. The next thing is when it comes to buying and renting, of course, there's a few things to keep in mind. So first of all, from a budget that we talked about, typically you have to put down at least 25%, maybe 50% if you're a foreign buyer. So there's a lot of money that you have to put up front. You want to make sure that you can afford that. And then you have your ongoing mortgage payments versus the rent payments. And in Israel, sometimes there is a big disparity. The mortgage payments could be a lot higher than your rent payments. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. The next thing is flexibility and security, and they're two sides of the coin. Renting gives you the flexibility. You can move from city to city. You can move from neighborhood to neighborhood. So you have that flexibility. The downside or the flip side of that is you don't necessarily have the security. You could get a phone call from your landlord who's saying, you know what, I'm selling the property, or I'm increasing it by 20%, or my son's moving in, so you don't have that security per se that you would have if you owned a home. Having said that, there are a few developers that have recently started offering long-term rental options where you can rent for up to 10 years and you can lock in your rental, and it will increase incrementally each year, but at least you know what it's going to look like. And that's something that a lot of people now are interested in. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out to me and I'll give you more information. The buying process is very different here. First of all, there's no central listing, there's no Zillow, there's no MLS. So you really have to rely on on your realtor. So you want to make sure that you have a realtor who is very well connected. You want to make sure that you have a realtor who uh, knows what's available and can really show you those properties. So that's the first thing. The other thing is you want to be able to move quickly. You want to have your ducks in order, as I say, which means if you want to take out a mortgage, have your mortgage pre-approved. If you need to transfer money, have your account set up. Know how you're going to transfer the money. Have your bank account in Israel set up. And by the way, that's important also for renting. If you're going to rent the property, you most likely will need to have a bank account in Israel, so you want to do that as well. And also look at other options, right? There are other options, for example, buying on paper, which means that you're buying something that's not built yet. You're buying it based on the blueprints, which is the paper. What that does for you, and the benefit of that is, first of all, you could often get a discount, 10 to 15%, cheaper than what it will cost once it's built. You can also put down a 20% payment, 20% payment, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more, but you can put down 20%. And then also it helps you lock in your price. So as real estate appreciates over time, you have your price, the price that you paid for it when you signed is the price that you will, in essence, you will have to pay when it's ready. The last point is, who can I trust, right? And there are a lot of options. There are a lot of great companies, a lot of great people, but there are also companies and individuals who are shady, who simply want to close a deal, who simply want to get their commission check. And so you really need to be careful. You want to get recommendations from people. You want to work with back guaranteed developers, and come to us. You want to have access to our network. We have a network of professionals that we've very carefully selected, from realtors to mortgage brokers to lawyers and so on and so forth. And if you're looking to buy something, you definitely want to tap into that. So I hope that was helpful. Just, I know, again, it's just really scratching the surface and there's a lot more we can go into, but we want to keep the ball rolling and get into other topics. So I hope that was helpful. We do have a lot of free resources, free information. We have a Facebook group that has over 9,000 members. We have a WhatsApp group that's very active. We have tips for Aliyah and for real estate. So reach out to me. Here's my contact information. Again, we're going to email us around, so you'll be able to jot it down. Reach out to me. Let's schedule a call. Let's talk. Let's see how we can help you. So it was a pleasure presenting to you, and now we'll open it up for some questions.
So I see here someone's asking if you can open a bank account in advance of Aliyah. People ask us this often. You can open up an account before Aliyah, but it's going to be an account as a foreigner rather than being an Israeli citizen. So unless you have a specific reason for doing so, like some people want to buy before making Aliyah, but if you're not doing that, may not be beneficial to open a bank account first. So again, depends on your reasoning. There are many people that buy before making Aliyah, and it's very important to reach out to us. And so we can refer you to a real estate lawyer who can explain to you the benefits of buying before or buying after. But if you're not buying, it may make sense to wait until you've actually made Aliyah, because if you don't, then you're going to have to go over the process all over again. Like, in other words, you're going to open up a bank account as a foreigner and then come as an Israeli and have to do it all over again. So again, it depends on the reasoning, but there are many cases, if you're not buying, that it's just not worth it, that it's worth it to wait.
Right. There's a question here about Bituach Leumi and benefits for people who are older, as we talked about. And so there's a few things. Healthcare coverage starts from day one, right? So from the moment you make Aliyah, you have healthcare coverage, and that's something that's important to realize. When it comes to pension benefits, those really depend on the situation, case by case, if the person has lived in Israel before, if they've worked in Israel before. So that really depends on that. There are a lot of accommodations from nursing homes to assisted living that the government subsidizes, or perhaps they're even free. And so we actually have partnered with a company that is a one-stop shop for people who are looking for all kind of support, from accommodations to private care, private aids, things like that. So if that's something that you want to get more information about, reach out to us. We can schedule a call with them and we can get it into it, because there's a lot of resources. Israel as a government provides a tremendous amount of resources to people who are at that age group, and you definitely want to take advantage of whatever is available. Or is anything else?
No, if anybody else has any other questions, please, you can, oh,
I do
sorry, they're
see
asking
one.
you
Sorry,
about,
I see one a question about changing dollars to shekels. So we're actually going to do a discussion about that. It really depends on how you exchange money. There's two main ways of doing it. You can either transfer it from your bank to bank, or you can use a transfer exchange company. The bank to bank tend to be the most expensive. When I transfer money, when I sold my home and transferred money, I use an exchange company called Isra Transfer. We've worked with them for many years. They have great service, and you tend to save a lot of money in transferring and exchanging the money. So happy to give you the contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, and we will do that. Okay.
I saw here there was a question about how to join the WhatsApp group. So we actually have two WhatsApp groups. We have one that's just for our clients, and then we have one that's for all Olim and Anglos. And we can put in here the links at the end of the sessions. Happy for anyone to join. They're great. Such a source of excellent information and support.
Yeah. You can just shoot me an email. I'll give you the link to the WhatsApp groups and also the Facebook groups. So feel free to reach out to me. Okay, I think at this point we've gotten to the end of the first session. Again, I want to encourage you to stay on. Well, next one we're going to be talking about a partnership that we have with a real estate company in the US, and they're our partner there to help people who are looking to buy properties, whether it's for investment purposes or looking to make Aliyah. It's a lot of really good insight and advice that Adam Kaplan is going to be sharing with us. So we're going to start in just a few minutes, so feel free to take a break if you want to, come back in, and we'll get started in about 5 minutes. So thanks,
Rafi, there's another
everyone.
question here.
Yeah,
Sorry, there's a question here about transferring money. Can't I just bring a check from a US bank and deposit into my new Israeli bank account?
it's very costly and it's problematic. And also, you can't just come with a suitcase of cash. There's a whole issue with that of money laundering. So, in general, some banks will do it, but it's easier and cheaper to just transfer money from your bank account to the Israeli bank account, or like I said, through an exchange company. Okay, well, it's good talking to you. I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll start up again in a few minutes. Take care, everyone. Be well. Have a good week.
Thank you for joining us. And in the meantime, if anyone else wants to write where they're from, we would love to hear. If there's any other questions, you can still add on. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. Actually, I think it's just a little bit out of order here. I'll just get the next one going. Okay, there you go. Okay, we'll bring Adam on board and we'll start in a couple of minutes. There you go. Adam, welcome. If you can just turn your camera on, let's test your mic. Make sure everything's working.
Hi, how are you? How's everything going?
Good, good. And we can hear you loud and clear, see you loud and clear. So we're good to go. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. If
Hi, Adam.
anybody,
Nice to meet you.
You as
Welcome.
well.
I was reaching out to you. I was worried you weren't going to come, but I see you're early. Excellent.
All good. I had to pick up my daughter from a sleepover, but we made it in time.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. We're used to Israeli time when everything starts a few minutes late, so this is perfect.
If you just joined us, we're going to start in a couple minutes. If you can just take a moment and introduce yourselves, let us know where you're from. It's great to meet people here and get a little bit of a sense of everyone's background.
Yep, absolutely.
Adam, where are you from?
I born and raised in New York, a suburb really, Rockland County. It's north of Manhattan, about a half hour north. And now I live on Long Island, about a half hour east of Manhattan.
Very nice. A true New Yorker.
New Yorker. That's right.
I wonder if me and Rafi did our accents, if you'd recognize where we're from.
Yeah, I worked hard to get rid of my accent. I went to college at University of Maryland, and when I graduated, I actually graduated early, unlike most people in the world, and I wasn't ready to start real life yet. And a couple of guys I knew that were a few years older had started like a home improvement company selling windows, siding, and roofing. So I took a job working there as a salesman for them. And I realized like I had the pitch down perfectly and I wasn't selling and I couldn't figure out why. And the owner of the company came on a pitch with me and he was like, dude, you were talking so fast and so New York. You were terrifying these people. He's like, you just have to slow down everything that you say and get rid of your accent and you'll start slaughtering the sales market. So that's what I did. And, it started to work.
So we had the opposite because we're originally South African and our dad was a salesperson. And I think his accent is what got him through every door all across America.
I love a South African accent. I had an old roommate she was from Durban.
Uh-huh.
Okay, very nice. I see people are coming in, so we can get started. If you can just take a moment and just share yourself, just let us know where you're from, and we can get started in a moment.
Just let me know when you want me to get going, and
Yeah,
I'm
just give
ready.
people a moment to come in, and then we'll get rolling.
Welcome,
Okay.
everyone. This is the first time we're doing the 6 sessions tonight. Usually we do one long webinar. This time it's a 6 30-minute webinar, 30-minute session. So I hope everybody's enjoying and getting a lot of useful information. I think maybe one more minute, Adam, and you can start. Rafi, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick intro for those people that just joined us, and then I'll introduce Adam. We'll get started. Just give it another 30 seconds or so, and then I'm just so. Okay, so we can get started with our second session. For those of you just joining us, welcome. My name is Rafi Shulman. I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. I'm here tonight for this session with my partner, Laurie Tzhaki, and also with Adam Kaplan, who's executive at Renaissance Realty Consulting Group. So thank you both for joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll have a very informative session with a lot of questions. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Of course, before we get started, just briefly sharing with you who we are and why we started. So Olim Advisors, we started back in 2016 because we recognized that people who want to make Aliyah, or people that want to buy a home in Israel, feel that the process is very daunting. It's very overwhelming. There's a lot of decisions that one has to make, especially when you're making it from afar. And so we started our service by really offering a very customized, high-end service where we pair you with an advisor, whether it's a real estate advisor or an Aliyah advisor, who can really guide you through the entire process from the very beginning of finding communities, projects, schools, and then if you're making Aliyah, the second step of dealing with the Israeli bureaucracy, and then, of course, providing you with ongoing support as you adjust your life in Israel. And the same thing with the real estate. As I mentioned, we'll help you the first phase and then really remain involved and oversee the transaction from beginning to end to make sure that you're taking advantage of and to make sure that you get something that meets your needs and within the budget. A lot of this guidance we give directly or through partnerships that we have with some amazing companies like the company that Adam represents. So I'd like to turn it over to Adam. Renaissance is a company that we've partnered with in New York that can give people in the US support on that side of the ocean. So we're here in Israel, we're their experts, and then you have the ability to also work with Renaissance. So you in essence have the best of both worlds. So with that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rafi. So my name is Adam Kaplan. For a little background, I'm a born and raised New Yorker, New York licensed attorney by trade. I got out of the practice of law when I got into real estate full time on the brokerage side, mostly because nobody likes attorneys, myself included. Sorry if there are any attorneys on here, but you know, it's kind of like a truism. A lot of lawyers blow up deals as opposed to make deals, and I always consider myself a deal maker. So I switched to the brokerage side to help make deals happen. And the legal background has obviously worked to my advantage to helping keep deals on the rails until they close. As far as my experience in general, I worked at Cushman & Wakefield, which is a global commercial real estate company in Manhattan, buying and selling buildings as well as leasing up buildings before moving out to Long Island, where I currently reside. And when I moved out to Long Island, I started to do some residential sales as well. I eventually got into some commercial mortgage brokerage, so financing for acquisitions and construction projects and the like, before joining Renaissance Realty, which is a family real estate office. At Renaissance, we have a number of different verticals. We own a title company. We own, excuse me, a hard money company, private lender. We have an acquisition development arm. We have our sales leasing brokerage that I run. We also have a commercial mortgage brokerage that I run, but I have a partner on that side. That's the day-to-day person for commercial mortgage brokerage. So we're involved in a lot of different verticals that are all complementary. So really understand how real estate works and the different levers that you can pull to help make a deal happen. In general, between myself and the other principals of the company, we have well over 100 years of experience in real estate and all different levels, whether from acquisition or brokerage, and all of which kind of helps to facilitate deals as needed. We partnered with Olim Advisors to act as their U.S. arm for these transactions, to give people a local advocate that understands the real estate landscape and understands the Israeli marketplace, so we can kind of act as a conduit and have your point of contact in the United States to help with the process and making sure that all of these deals move seamlessly and towards a closing. Overall, through this partnership, we have access to exclusive properties. I don't know how familiar everybody is with properties and how they're made available in Israel versus the United States, but there's a huge difference between the two. There's no MLS equivalent or Zillow or Trulia type equivalent. So you actually have to know where these properties are and where they're available. We have partnerships with agents that are local, that know these properties, know the ins and outs, know what's available, what's not available, what's going to be coming available, different avenues that you need to understand from a financial perspective to help make a deal happen. And we kind of will quarterback it, so to speak, from the United States to make sure that everything is running as one would expect and highlight any potential issues that we see coming into place, that you're kind of prepared for things before they happen is really what the idea here is. And overall, I think that kind of gives a basic idea as to what we're looking to do. We have, oh, I see the thing up on the screen. Perfect. Yeah, so buyers will receive that end-to-end support, financial guidance, legal assistance, kind of what I was referencing, making the whole entire process as stress-free and efficient as possible for everybody. There's an established network, as I mentioned. Yeah, here you go. So the important tips that we wanted you to be aware of is understanding the real estate marketplace in Israel. It's unique, both from a cultural and overall market conditions, as I made reference to. So it's something you really need to have boots on the ground to really understand. There's major considerations when buying property there. You can purchase property on paper, which is just a term of art, if you will. But if you're buying it on paper, it can come at a great reduction in pricing. You would only have to put 20% down up front. So the 80% delta that will be due is locked in, and you can figure out your financing as time evolves, and the appreciation that is occurring on that property as it's being built, you actually are generating that equity as the deal is being built, as the property is being built. So there's a number of different ways that we have to discuss in terms of what your goals are, where you want to be from a location perspective, what your goal is from a financial perspective. If this is just a straight vacation home to enjoy Israel, if this is something that you're looking at from a financial perspective as a long-term investment, as a short-term investment, would all impact the types of properties that we would most likely be selecting for you to view and check out. There are tax consequences that need to be discussed, and different parameters that could potentially lower those tax consequences for the buyers throughout the process, both upfront as well and in the back end, that we can discuss with the clients as they're getting involved in the marketplace. And in general, one thing that we always advise all of our buyers to do, and this is whether it's domestic or international, is to have all their ducks in a row. Before you start entering into the marketplace, you want to make sure that you have your mortgage pre-approval, that you have bank accounts ready to go, that you have your real estate lawyer teed up and ready to go, and all your necessary documentation in place. The last thing that you want to have happen is finally get all excited about a property and make an offer on it, and you want to get rocking and rolling and lock in that property, but you don't have all the back end paperwork completed, you don't have your mortgage approved, and some other buyer swoops in and steals that property out from underneath you because you were getting all of your necessary paperwork prepared. So we always advise you to have all those ducks in a row to begin with, so that you can really pounce on things as they become available. Once you've educated yourself on the marketplace, you want to be able to pull that trigger as quickly as possible. I think that kind of covers it. That's my contact information. I'm reachable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on my mobile, 917-689-3488, or my email, which is listed there, akaplan@rrcgusa.com, Renaissance Realty Consulting Group. Look forward to working with all of you and helping you out and answering any questions that you may have.
Great, Adam. Thanks so much. And one of the things we forgot to do before when I was presenting is if you want to schedule a call with either myself or with Adam, just in the Q&A box, just type in me, type the word me, M-E, and either Rafi or Adam. And that way, when we go through at the end, we'll know who we should reach out to. And of course, if if you think about it, and if you want to schedule a call later this week, of course, you can reach out to us. But just while the iron's hot, so to speak, and as we're talking about the different topics, just go ahead and if you want to type your name, just type me and Rafi or Adam, and we will make sure to reach out to you. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat and into Q&A window, and we will answer them. I see here there's a question. Somebody's looking for a small ranch or a small farm or a ranch, and it's those are kind of unusual requests. There are some that are out there, and they're different. If you want to buy land, for example. So what we would need to do is you can reach out to us, and we'll need to figure out where in the country you're looking for, what's your budget, timeline, things like that. And then that's the role that we play here is we will go out to our network and look to find to see if there's anything that's available. Typically, a lot of the people that we help are looking for moving into cities, towns, yeshuvim, but there are people that just want the space, they want the land, and so farms and things like that. There are options as well. So feel free to reach out to Adam or to myself, and we can talk about trying to help you. Any other questions? Let's see. No, I don't think so. Okay, Adam, great. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. For those of you that want to stick around, we're going to be moving over to Racheli, who's the interior decorator. So we'll start that in about 15 minutes or so. So feel free to stick around. We're just going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll start up in about 15 minutes. So have a good day for those of you who are leaving. And keep in mind, we are recording the sessions. We will send out the email to everyone who has registered. So if you have to miss some of it, you'll get the entire recording, and we'll also have the contact information for everybody that's presenting. So feel free to reach out to us. All right. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Laura.
Adam.
Thanks, Rafi.
Be well.
Take care. If anyone has any further questions, anything at all about Aliyah, anything that you've heard, feel free to ask us, or you can always send out an email to us personally if you don't want to put it here on the Q&A. We're always happy to help anyone with any questions at all.
So there's a question here about shipping. And so, yes, there are shipping companies that are experts in this, and they can talk to you about the cost of shipping, the timing of shipping. To answer your question about shipping appliances, you do have to take into account that the voltage here in Israel is 220, which is different from the US and countries in Europe as well. You could get adapters or converters, as people call them. In many cases, it's not the greatest situation. Also, if you're bringing appliances from abroad, very often the warranties don't apply to Israel. If you're bringing larger appliances, they might not fit through the doorways into the kitchen. So in general, we recommend that people consider buying in Israel. Prices have come down a lot over the past number of years, and so there's not as big of a difference. There are some appliances that I still recommend that people bring. If you want to get a new big screen TV, laptops, cell phones, those still are typically a lot cheaper outside of Israel. But when it comes to the ovens and the microwaves, the small kitchen appliances, things like that, might not be the best bet. The only thing is, it comes down to a dollar and cents kind of equation or calculation, because if you decide to throw out your, for example, kitchen appliances, the small ones that you might want to bring, then you're going to have to buy them here. So it might make sense to ship it. It might be cheaper to ship it and buy a converter. Those are questions that you can ask the shipper. And again, reach out to us. We will happily introduce you to the different shippers that we work with and recommend, and you can then have a one-on-one discussion with them.
I think typically, as Laf is saying, I made Aliyah with my family 15 years ago. We bought all our appliances here. It is a bit more expensive than the States, but all of my friends that made Aliyah at the same time, they all had issues with their appliances from overseas and didn't have warranties. They had so many problems. So I think people just came to the realization, and like I mentioned, the size of the appliances, there was just too many problems, and they just preferred to get all of their the bigger appliances here. Whereas the smaller things, the bread makers, things like that, to check and see. But if those types of things can be brought in, that makes sense. But definitely washer, dryer, fridge, oven, things like that. From my experience and from what I've seen around, people in the end do prefer to buy here in Israel. Someone's asking here, when does one use a US real estate agent versus an Israeli one? When people are buying here in Israel, they're using an Israeli agent that knows exactly what's going on the ground. What Adam was speaking about before is that we have a partner in the States, because sometimes people like to meet someone face to face. But the agents that are actually looking for you here in Israel, the ones that we are recommending, are here in Israel, know what properties are available, know how to find what's looked for, understand what it is to buy on paper, newer properties, secondhand properties. They're here on the ground. I hope that answers your question. Afi, did I
And
answer
the
that?
benefit, and one of the reasons why we partnered with Renaissance, is that if you are thinking about selling your home in the US and buying a home in Israel, you can work with one team that can handle everything from A to Z. So we can help you selling your property in the US, figure out budget, things like that, and then help you buy something in Israel. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. They don't want to work with 5 or 7 or 10 different people, everyone giving them different advice. They want to work with one team that can give them advice from beginning to end. And that's really the benefit that one has by working with Olim Advisors in that team, is that we see the entire picture and we can really guide you on both sides of the equation. So selling in the US or selling abroad, and then buying in Israel.
And then I see someone here wants to actually buy electronics in Europe. Then if that makes sense, in terms of the 220, then for sure, if that makes sense in terms of pricing and shipping it over. And you can reach out to us. We can send you a shipping guide. You can speak to different shippers and just get from them a better understanding. Also, we're going to have at 9:30 Israel time, there's going to be Adam will be speaking from a shipping company. So you can also be on then and ask your questions then.
Right. Okay. I think we'll just hang around here for a little bit. We'll start in about just over 10 minutes. The next topic, as I mentioned, is interior design with Racheli, who's amazing. I think you'll really enjoy listening to her and get some really valuable tips. And of course, it applies to people who are buying as well as people that have existing homes. And if you want to get some tips about interior decorating, she's a great person to talk to and to listen to. Out of curiosity, I'm curious how many of you have been in previous webinars of ours, and how many of you, this is the new one, so this is the first one. And if you don't mind just typing in the window, if it's the first time and you've been here before, just type repeat. It's just always interesting to me to see how many people come to attend webinars time and time again, and how many people are new. And of course, both of those, okay, we welcome all new members, and we're happy to do these webinars and invite you to join as many times as you want. The more the merrier. So let us know. We'd love to know that.
Someone's asking here about the 183 days. It's like this golden number that's always discussed in Israel. So it is from the day that you do make Aliyah. Excuse me. But don't take that number as an exact number. You know, things here are it's kind of like the gray area. But it is from the day that you make Aliyah, and a lot of times that's the number they look at if they're going to, keep certain rights that someone has, whether it's healthcare. Um, but again, there's no guarantees of that exact number being, like the red line in Israel. Unfortunately, bureaucracy and things like that don't exactly work so black and white. So it's important just to understand that.
I see somebody here is from LA, so our prayers and thoughts to you, go out to you and everyone that's been affected. It's just awful to see what's happening there. So please, God, things will calm down, and the firefighters will be able to get hold of it, and things will get better soon.
Yeah. And it's nice to see that people are coming back. We'd love to hear from the rest of you if you've been on our webinars before, if you've enjoyed them, if there's things that you want to hear about that we haven't presented. Thank you. Thank you. Seems to be something new every time. I'm glad that you find the information useful. Rafi works very, very hard on the webinars and always tries to incorporate very professional and excellent people on. So we're glad that it comes across and you guys find it inspirational and useful, hopefully.
And just while we're waiting, I want to share a couple of stories that I found quite inspiring. First of all, is we had somebody that worked with us a while ago, who his parents were living in the U.S. and the father was 101, and I think the mother was 97, and they just decided finally that they wanted to make Aliyah. And sure enough, they were able to come here and they settled down, and thank God they're living very healthy, happy life in Israel. And so the point I always make is if they can make Aliyah at 101 and 97, then you can. And the funny thing is that the father, years ago, when he was in his 40s, he wanted to make Aliyah, and the Jewish agency said he was too old at that point. So he definitely showed them and finally made it. So that's always an inspiring story that I like to share with people. The other story I just wanted to share is I had a conversation recently with somebody who had been thinking about making Aliyah. They've been to Israel a lot, they've come on vacations, they have family here, and they just couldn't kind of wrap their arms around it. They couldn't come up with the right plan. And so we had a 45 minutes or so discussion, and we kind of broke it down into pieces. We talked about their kids, we talked about their employment, we talked about different communities, and the next day he sent me an email just thanking me and letting me know that please God they're going to be making Aliyah in the summer of 2027. So not coming tomorrow, and we don't suggest that this is an impulse decision. We don't want you to just, buy a ticket and hop on the next plane. This is obviously something that involves a lot and big decisions. But I think what helped this person and the family was to help them take this abstract dream that they had and turn it into more of a concrete plan. And things might still change, and maybe they come a little earlier, a little later. But he now felt like he had a plan. He now felt like he knew what he needed to do, and that he's on this journey to please God, making Aliyah. So a lot of the people that reach out to us don't have a set plan, don't have necessarily an idea of where they want to move to, but they just have this feeling, they have this desire, they have this longing to be here. And so that's okay too. You don't have to just have everything figured out. Even if you don't, and you just want to talk it out, we're happy to listen. We're happy to give you advice. And so just know that we're here, whether it's making Aliyah or for buying homes. We have people that reach out to us and say, I have a budget of X, but I have no idea where I want to live. I have no idea where I want to buy. And we really talk through it. We help them figure out what they should be focusing on. And so for those of you who feel like this is still something a bit down the road, that's perfectly fine. We're here. Reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you. I see somebody was talking about here that they have kids or grandkids in the army, and it's amazing to see, how people are coming because they've been inspired by their children or grandchildren step up and say, I'm here to help, I'm here to serve, and just from around the world, from the obvious countries of the U.S. and Canada and UK, and people really from countries you never would have thought of are coming forward and saying, you know what, this is where I want to be. And so it's just thank you for sharing that with us, and it's great to hear that you're on your ways.
Rafi, I don't know if you know about this question regarding the new announced purchase tax discount. It's unclear if to qualify this has to be your only home in Israel or only home worldwide. I'm not sure.
No, so they don't look at your houses. They don't look at anything outside of Israel. So if you own properties outside of Israel, that doesn't factor into the purchase tax. Where it might factor in is if you need to get a mortgage and they'll look at your debt. But if you're making Aliyah and you don't have a home in Israel, then you can definitely take advantage of that. So that's a good question and something to keep in mind. I also see here a question about incentives, and I know for a fact up north, we actually have we've been working with a developer in Achziv, which is a beautiful beach all the way up north, and there's very big income tax breaks if you live up north. I forget exactly what the percentage is, but for a lot of people, that's a big incentive. People that don't have to live near the center of Israel, they don't have to commute, people that work remotely with companies in the US and around. If you live in certain areas, there are income tax benefits. And so if this is something that you want us to look into, reach out to us and we can talk to the right people and get you some more information. Just looking at the clock, we'll start in just a few minutes. If you just joined us, let us know where you're from. If there's specific questions that you have, you can go ahead and put them into the Q&A window. We'll get to them at the end of each session. We'll do a little Q&A and try and answer as many questions as possible. Laura, I see Racheli's here, so I'm going to go ahead and add her. Laura, you're on mute. I'm not sure if that's intentional.
Sorry, I was just going to tell you, yes.
Okay.
It's so great. Everyone's coming on early. I'm so used to Israel time when everyone comes so late. Hi, Racheli, welcome. Going to start in just a few minutes.
Okay, great.
Hi, nice to see you.
Hi.
You as well. So good to see you.
Good
We're
to
just
see you.
waiting for everybody to come in and we'll get started just a couple minutes after the hour.
Okay, perfect.
Michali, I'm so excited. I love interior design.
It's just the three of us now?
Well, we
No,
have people, well, it's the three presenters, so each
Oh,
session has
okay.
presenters, but then we have an audience, there's about 30, 35 people or so that are watching us.
there's
Rachel, can you see
42
can you
right
see the
now, 42.
presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'll flip through the sides as you present, so I just wanted to make sure that you can see it.
Okay, great.
Just a funny story. Michali's husband used to watch my kids when my kids were little. Just a small world.
So the question about just sort of the previous topic we were talking about with real estate. I don't know if Haifa is north enough. I would have to check and see. I don't know, Rachel, if you've ever dealt with it, but the question about like tax benefits, I know that if you go in further up north, there are. I'm not sure if Haifa falls
Mm,
into that area. We can check for you and let you know.
I'm not sure.
Right, because Achziv is Nahariya. When Rafi mentioned Achziv, so it's the northern tip of Nahariya. With Haifa, yeah, I'm not sure that it's included, but we can definitely check for sure.
And if you've just joined us, we're going to start in a couple minutes. If you can just take a moment and introduce yourself, let us know your name, where you're from. We just love to get to know people who are joining us. And if this is your first time, then you can write new. If you've been in our webinars before, you can just write repeat person. We love people. We love having people come back again and again, and of course new people as well. So really encourage people to join. We're actually going to be doing another webinar next Sunday, similar kind of format. We're going to have different topics that we're going to cover. And so if you know of anybody, or if you want to join, you're welcome. Just register for the one next week. It also is going to run from 7 to 10 p.m. Israel time, or from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time next Sunday.
And if anyone wants to be contacted, you can just write here me when Racheli starts speaking, anything about interior design, or when Adam spoke about the real estate, or anything about Aliyah or real estate for us, just let us know. You can write here me, and we can reach out to you, or you can just send us an email. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Yeah,
Okay,
Janet, I understood.
We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started.
Michali, I think you have the best job ever. You go and you take homes and you make them beautiful. It's like my
Really
dream.
do. I love my job.
It's amazing.
It also never gets boring because it's always a different house, a different family. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I didn't love helping Olim so much, I might delve into your world a little bit.
You're always invited.
Thank you. Okay, maybe we'll combine.
Sounds good to me. Okay, we'll get started now. I just want to introduce myself quickly for those of you who are just joining. My name is Rafi Shulman. I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors, and I'd like to just introduce our panelists for this session. So my partner, Laura Itzhaki, and Racheli Lewinson. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing the information and guidance that you have. Just before we start with Racheli, before I turn it over to Racheli, I just want to quickly share with you who we are and why we do these webinars. If you're just joining us, it's just important that you understand the context. So we started Olim Advisors about 8 years ago because we recognized that making Aliyah and buying a home in Israel are challenging, overwhelming processes. And we want to be able to guide people, we want to be able to inspire people and just kind of show them the way. And really, what we did is we created a service where we pair you with your own advisor, whether it's a real estate advisor or an Aliyah advisor. And of course, through our partnerships, we also can introduce you to experts in a number of different areas. And the whole goal here is really to guide you through from beginning to end. So if you're making Aliyah, we'll guide you from the early stages of finding the community, finding schools, finding a home, what to ship, and so on and so forth. Then the kind of the middle part of a service, he's dealing with the Israeli bureaucracy, with the government offices, the banks, and so on and so forth. And then just really providing with ongoing support so that you have the peace of mind. And the same thing applies to real estate. If you want to buy, whether you live abroad or you live here, we can guide you through the process. We can help you find communities that are suitable for you. We can help you find projects, developers, and introduce you to a network of professionals, and Rachel is part of the network, who really will go above and beyond and take care of you to make sure that you find the right home that meets your needs and meets your budget. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Racheli, if you want to introduce yourself and share your words of wisdom.
Okay, so hi, my name is Racheli Lewinson. I may be a great interior designer, but I don't know about my public speaking skills, so bear with me. So I'm an interior designer based here in Israel. I specialize in residential interior design with a focus on new construction and full renovations. My approach is centered on creating homes that are not only beautiful, but also tailored to each client's unique needs, styles, and lifestyle. A little bit about me is I grew up both in the US and in Israel, so that gives me a unique perspective. I understand what English-speaking Olim and foreign buyers value in a home. Things like functionality, durability, creating a space that truly feels like your own. At the same time, I've spent years navigating the complexities of working with Israeli contractors, vendors, building codes. My experience with both new construction and renovations allow me to help clients take advantage of opportunities and customization or reimagining existing spaces. One thing I've learned over the years is that your home is more than just a physical place. It's a reflection of your life, your family, and your dreams. And my passion is helping clients turn that into a reality. Why my services are catered to Olim and foreign buyers? Well, working with English speakers and foreign buyers is something I truly enjoy, and it's where I feel I can offer most value. Many of my clients are Olim who are adjusting to life in Israel, often juggling challenges like learning Hebrew, navigating bureaucracy, understanding how things work here. When it comes to designing and building a home, I aim to take the burden off their shoulders. For foreign buyers, I act as their eyes, ears, and legs throughout the process. I guide them through every stage, ensuring to get the best deals on materials and services. If any issues arise, whether it's a delay with contractors or sourcing the right materials or making on-ground decisions, I handle everything so they can have no worry. My goal is to make the experience as seamless and stress-free as possible, no matter where in the world my clients are located. My new construction offers incredible opportunity for customization, choosing materials, finishes, or layouts that reflect your personal style. And for those renovating older properties, there's often untapped potential to completely transform a space to suit your needs. My role is to guide you through either process and make it as smooth and enjoyable as possible. So now I'd like to share a few tips that can help you as you think about designing your home in Israel. When purchasing property, explore the benefits of new construction, but also consider flexibility for renovations. New construction provides the opportunity for customization. You can choose finishes, layouts, materials that align with the style and functional needs. With everything being brand new, you have the assurance of knowing exactly what you're getting, minimizing unexpected surprises often associated with older properties. However, renovating an older property can be even more customizable since you're working one-on-one with your own contractor. Unlike new construction, where your choices might be limited by the offer by the building developer, of course, there's always the standard, and then you always have an option to, you know, get other stuff, but we're not going to get into that. Renovations allow for complete flexibility in design, materials, and layouts. Both paths are unique, offer unique opportunities depending on your goals and priorities. So another thing is plan for functionality first. Israeli homes are always smaller, almost always smaller, and they often have much less built-in storage than you're used to. So,
Or none at all.
yeah, or none at all, exactly. So always my first thing when I go into an apartment is to think of how I could increase the storage and make the whole space multifunctional. So built-in cabinets, under-stair storage, multifunctional furniture make a huge, huge difference. And there's, you know, it's all about taking advantage of every little inch of space in your home. Another very important point is work with trusted professionals. Not all contractors and vendors are created equal. As you know, sometimes the expensive is cheap and the cheap is expensive. So you really have to be choosing your team. Choosing your team can make or break your project. Look for professionals with strong recommendations that are experienced with English-speaking clients. It's always a bonus. Always establish clear communication from the start. Sometimes you think that you understand each other. My experience is you could never be too clear, and make sure things are written down. And yeah, just try to never be afraid to communicate too much what you're looking for. And the last thing is dive deep into your needs and dreams for your spaces before you start. Take the time to think about what you truly want from your home. How do you want to feel when you walk in to each room? What features would make your daily life easier and more enjoyable? By understanding your priorities, you can create a design that not only looks amazing, but also works perfectly for you now and for the future. And for the future, it's very important to remember, like, sometimes we think of now when we're designing. And when I go into a home, I'm always thinking of 20 years from now. How are you going to be there with your grandchildren and marriage, depending on what stage you're in? But you need to try to think as far as possible so your design is both timeless with the functionality and if you want it to be timeless with design, but that's something else, mostly with the functionality. So if you're considering designing or renovating your home in Israel, I'd love to help. Whether you're starting a new construction or giving an older home a fresh start, I can guide you through the entire process from concept to completion. To get started, I'm offering a free consultation for webinar attendees. During our call, we could discuss your vision, your goals, and how we could bring your dreams into life. As a special thank you for joining this webinar, I'm offering 10% discount for my design services if you mentioned that you attended.
Great, Racheli, thank you. Can you kind of on the top of your head think about a couple of mistakes maybe that people have made that that they should avoid? So let's say if you walked into a home and they did X, Y, or Z, something specific that comes to mind that people maybe should know about and avoid. Is there anything that you can think of along those lines?
So things that you should avoid in design. Well, when I said about like the deep dive, it's very important to really try to break down to details how you live, because sometimes you have specific needs and you don't think of them. You just think of the bigger picture of what you want the house to look at, and then it looks beautiful, but I don't know, there's no coat closet, or the kids are throwing all their bags in the entrance of the house, but you didn't think of the fact that that's what happens. And then the entrance of the house is always messy. So my experience is, what I try to do is to really, really understand with my clients how they live. So when you have a space for everything, no matter how small the house is, you're able to keep it organized.
That makes sense.
That and mistakes with using materials that are not practical, look dirty all the time, stuff like that.
I
Right.
feel like it's so different here. All those types of things, like the flooring here, there's this whole concept of what floors you see the dust or you don't see the dust because we're in a very dusty country, whereas in the
Right.
States, you don't think about things like that. Or
Right.
and when you say the cheap is more expensive and you go and buy the cheaper windows, and then really in the end you're
Right. Or, sometimes you choose a very cheap contractor and he's half the price, or a very cheap kitchen, and you see, and you don't understand that the reason why it's cheaper is because the materials are not as good quality, so they rot very quickly, or the contractor doesn't do any finishes. And the beauty in a renovated house is the finishes, for everything to be perfect to the last detail. So I'm not saying that you always need to go, like, I'll always guide my clients through what things do we not need to do in the best quality, and what things are absolutely vital to do well.
That's so important because there are some things that I feel like you need to spend more money on, and there's some things where it's not as important. And I think to have you there to guide people through that, and when people are buying homes now, and a lot of people are buying homes in Israel, and it's a whole different, I was used to in the States to have everything was carpeting or wood
Right.
floors, and here that's just not really something that you see. So then
So
what
much
floor?
sun and dust, it just doesn't work in Israel.
Right.
Right. Rochelle,
Yeah.
do you also get involved with projects where people are looking to upgrade their home and then sell it? I know in the States, there's
Yes.
always articles about what you should spend money on. So can you talk a little bit about that for those folks here who might be thinking about downsizing? Are there certain things that are worthwhile spending money
Wait,
on
sorry,
and certain
you're
things?
saying like buying a home in Israel in order to sell it?
Well, I'm saying even if people that live in Israel, right? Maybe somebody is downsizing and they want to sell their home in Israel or the States. I think it applies universally. I think there's certain things that people say are worthwhile spending money to upgrade, because then if you sell it, you can make more money on the sale, where some things are just kind of you pouring money into a home. Is that something that you deal with?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what I have done is, like, people that buy properties for an investment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'll help them design the place. So they have to choose all the materials and they have to make the layout. So I'll help them create the layout and choose the materials that will make them gain the most, amount back. So if the
Right.
materials will look nice together for the same amount of money, but it will be more appealing to the eye, and that the space suits the most amount of people. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. For those of you who are just watching, if you want to schedule a consultation with Rochelle, you can just type in me to. I see one person already responded here, but you can just type in me into the Q&A window, and then we'll introduce you to Rochelle after the webinar and get into the details. As you can see, Rochelle is giving a lot of great advice, but everyone's situation is different. So go ahead and go ahead and do that.
And then Racheli, there's a few questions. So first of all, it says the ad says the number of rooms, what makes up the count. Does a mamad count as a bedroom? So a mamad does count as a
Does.
bedroom, right? Okay, that does. So when it says 5 rooms, it means four
Right, it's very
bedroom.
confusing for Americans, because Israelis consider the living room a bedroom, like a room.
A
So
room.
if you hear 5 rooms, it's 4 bedrooms.
Right.
Always take down a bedroom.
Right.
And then someone's asking you, they're saying, what recommendations do you have for a couple entering a completely empty apartment and are taking on a design by themselves? No renovations for now. So are there any like easy 1 or 2 tips that you can think of?
Yeah. So what I like to do, and I think it's very important, like, it's, a lot of times you go to a store and you're like, oh, I like this, and oh my gosh, I like this. And then you get the things and you put them in your house, but they don't look as good in your house that they did in the store. And so what I really I recommend that you look at pictures. Try to analyze when you look at a picture, say in Pinterest, and this picture of this house makes you feel really good. Try to analyze what it is and look at all the details. Don't just look at the chair. Look at what materials are the chair made out of, and are there moldings on the wall, and what color is the wall made out of, and like all all the details in the picture together create a beautiful picture. And if you take those points, it'll help you understand what it is you like and how to create that in in your home. And I think I learned that. I also, like, my side thing is my whole I love painting, and I taught painting for years, and that's really how I taught to paint. When you paint, you look at the picture or the scenery, and you break it down to little shapes and little details. And really in design, when you're trying to create a home, a look, something that you've liked in other pictures or other spaces, breaking it down to details could really help you um like make that whole vision.
Okay,
Right.
makes
The
sense.
colors, the textures. Oh, I love it all.
Yeah.
There's a question here about Tama 38, and just to explain to everyone who's not familiar, Tama 38 is in essence it's urban revitalization. It's in essence municipalities giving developers the right to either add additional floors, strengthen the building, and then they get additional floors above the building. Or what's happening now more often than not is that they're knocking buildings down and rebuilding them, and then the existing tenants, benefit from a brand new apartment. So the question here is, Rachel, have you had experience? Can you share maybe if you've worked with owners, developers who are going through that process and kind of planning through it?
Yeah, my experience, I've worked with a couple of people who were going through Tama 38. What we did was kind of, they didn't want to wait for the whole thing to get done, so we did it in stages. We kind of did the first part of the house with the thought of when they finish doing the renovation, we'll complete the whole thing. And then we kind of started the the construction, um knowing what rooms are going to be added and saving the tiles so we have enough tiles to do the same thing in those rooms.
Okay, great. So the person who asked, if you want to, we can connect you with Racheli, and she can, really go into the details and answer specific questions that you might have. There's also a lot of questions about, about whether or not you deal with people who are abroad or primarily people in Israel already. What's your client
So I
base
really
look
do
like?
both. I have plenty of clients who are living in the States, and we have Zooms and late at night, and with WhatsApp, I send them pictures of, we could either do, like, I do everything with them being in the States. So till literally till the bed sheets in the end. So if we could do, let's say if we're choosing tiles, I could either send pictures or we could have a Zoom meeting in the tile store. The people I work with know that this is my clientele and are always very they try very hard to make themselves available in more American hours, even though that's like when the business hours are closing. So we really try to be available for them, even if they're in the States, and I'm definitely available. And yeah, it's always, it works very well because I'm here. I take care of everything for them, and it actually makes things easier for them because they don't feel the need to come and have all the site visits. I just do it for them. I send some pictures. And of course, I have clients in Israel that are just very busy or not, and they want me to do that for them as well. So it depends on you. If you want to be hands-on and come to each site visit and be on top of everything, you can. But if you don't want to, I'm happy to do it for you, and just give you, like, if there's any questions, obviously I speak to you right away, and, like, but I take care of the whole thing. So you really choose how involved you want to be.
Okay. And one
Sounds
of
like
the
a
things
dream.
that I was impressed about when we first started work together is the fact that you don't just do the designs. You have a crew that does the work, and you negotiate with the vendors. And so maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think the role that you play is very different from a typical interior designer, and I think it's important that people realize that.
Yeah, it's very important to me that you really get the best prices. And what I do is I always give you 2 or 3 even, price quotes for everything. I have a list of vendors that I work with, but I'm always on the lookout for more. But I have high demands on the vendors that I work with to get the best prices and the best service, which is not easy to find, but definitely out there. And I negotiate. And when I have the different price quotes, it gives me that leverage of like, okay, you either match this or no. And with the years, I've gotten, better and better. And the vendors know they have to give me the best prices. And yeah, it's very important for me that you get the best deal and the best service.
Yeah, I think that's very important, especially in Israel when things are done differently, and sometimes people will take advantage of you if you don't know what the
Right.
market is like. So I
And
think it's
sometimes they
amazing.
hear English and they're like, oh, they don't know the prices. But no, I know the prices and I know that it's supposed to be this amount. So either go under that amount or I'll find someone else that will.
Right, right. I think that's great. Okay, I think
Someone's asking also if you work all over Israel, if you work in projects all over, or are you only in specific areas?
I do work. Israel is not that big. And I have a car and yeah, I work all over Israel.
Okay. There's
There's a
another
question
technical.
here.
Oh,
Sorry, just a couple more questions. One is just if you can talk about the interior walls, because the construction here is different. In the States, it's all 2x4s
Yeah.
wood. Here, it's all
Yeah, it's
blocks
very
and stuff.
different. Over here, you basically always need an engineer to come with you to see the apartment, and you look at the plans, and the engineer is going to tell us which walls we could break and which walls we can't. Um, it's never going to be a whole wall that you can't. It's usually just going to be there's going to be pillars, columns inside the wall. The engineer will tell us where the columns are. If it's a wall that you absolutely must remove, there's always solutions depends on how much you want to spend. You could put the column in the ceiling, you could like move it. It depends on the building, depends on the personal situation. There's always a way to move it, but it's not as easy as just as it is in the States, but it's still possible.
Great. Okay. I think, Laura, is that it? I think we covered.
yeah, I think we answered. Does anyone else have a final question? Or if you want to have a free consultation with Racheli, you can write here. And she'll get back to you. Racheli, thank you so much. It was
My pleasure.
great information.
And I wish you all good luck.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. For those of you who want to stay on, we're going to be talking to Natan next, Natan Nagar, who's a mortgage broker. So kind of ties in if you want to refinance your house so you can do the renovations, and you can talk to Natan and you can talk to Racheli and you can have a package deal. So thank you, Racheli. Have a
My
Laila Tov. Good
pleasure.
night.
Thanks.
And
Thank you so
we'll
much. It was
speak
a
to you soon.
pleasure.
Take care. Okay, moving on along. So we just can take a few minute break here. We'll just get set up for the next session. If you have
Natan is
any,
on already, Rafi. You can just
yeah, I'll
make
go
it.
ahead and add Natan. If
Yeah.
anyone has any questions about mortgages, you can start typing them in now. We'll get to them towards the end of the presentation.
I'm
Uh,
interested. Who's been here since the beginning? Is everyone here from the beginning or people going in and out? It's hard. I don't get to
I'm
see.
from the beginning.
Let me know who's been here from the beginning or who's coming. Hi, Natan. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. This is
Sure.
a new experience. This 6 sessions in a row.
Call a vote for you guys pulling through it all.
That's great. It's the information I think that people are giving is so helpful, and hopefully people are able to absorb it all. We're going to get started again in just a few minutes, and we will be recording it. So if you have to come and go, we'll send out an email within a couple of days with all the recording of the entire webinar, so you can fast forward, you can watch again. So feel free to stay or to leave and come back in. If you're just joining us, please just take a moment and introduce yourself just in the Q&A window. Just type your name, where you're from, so we can get to know you a little bit. If this is your first time, say first timer. If you've been here before, say repeat timer, repeat watcher. It's always a pleasure for us to talk to people that are coming here for the first time. And of course, we welcome people to come back time and time again. And also, if there are topics that you'd like for us to cover, there's so many topics that are relevant to making Aliyah, buying a home, or just living in Israel. And so we want to really try over time, touch upon all the different topics and get as many answers and good information as possible. So feel free to do that.
Thank you for those that have been here from the beginning. Wow, you guys are amazing. I hope you're finding this interesting and useful and helpful. It's great to see all of you here.
Natan, can you see the screen on your end? Can you see the presentation?
I can see the presentation, yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll just wait another 2-3 minutes and we'll get started.
Natan, maybe before you start presentation, you can tell everyone where you're from.
So originally, partially from Brooklyn, partially from Chicago. So I was born in Brooklyn. And then when we were about 10 years old, my twin sister and I, we moved with our family to Chicago. And I spent the rest of my upbringing there. After high school, I came for what's known as our year in Israel. I guess if you know, you know, you come here for your year, you kind of do a deep dive in a yeshiva seminary to kind of learn a little bit about Torah and Judaism, so on and so forth. And it was during that year that I came to the decision that I did not want to hold off on making Aliyah. And so I decided to come. I went back for a summer to visit my family, of course, and then it was time to do Aliyah. If you've already done Aliyah, then you know there's a lot of stages to go through. I wish I knew about Olim Advisors. I don't know if you guys were around back then. This was back in 2013. Wow, all the hoops that I had to go through. I'm so happy that it's done. Even now, 10 years later, I'm so happy that it's done. And then, yeah, I spent another year in yeshiva, got into the army, and did my service there in the army.
As a offer.
So you've been gone through a journey, I think, like many of us have.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah.
We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Just waiting for people to come in. If you just joined us, if you can just take a moment and introduce yourself, just type into the Q&A window there. You can click on the button, just where you're from, your name. That'd be great, and then we'll get started in a minute.
Natan, something Racheli said, the interior designer, before he reminded me of you. She said she knows the prices here, but she gives the American service, and it reminded me of exactly what you said. Like you managed to get like the good deals in the banks here, but you also know how to, give all of our clients what they're
Yeah.
used to.
Provide customer service like an American and negotiate like an Israeli.
All right, that was what I told
Absolutely.
you. I love
That's what
that.
you were thinking about, I think.
I
Yeah.
didn't remember that, but at the time I liked it, yes.
Yeah.
It's
No, you have to
exactly what
have like a
everybody
boots on the
needs.
ground. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
to find that the balance of those two things is just so important. Absolutely.
Okay, I think we'll get started. So for those of you who have just joined us, I'd just like to welcome you. My name is Rafi Shulman, and I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. My partner, Lara Itzhaki, is here moderating and driving this forward with me. So thank you for doing that. And for this session for mortgages, I'd like to introduce you to Natan Nagar, who works for Levantech. It's actually Levantech Mortgages is Natan's company. So welcome, Natan, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited.
Of course. I'd like to just, for those of you joining, just give you just a very brief background about Olim Advisors and why we're holding these webinars. And the reason is that when we started Olim Advisors back in 2016, we realized and we recognized that making Aliyah is not a simple process, and buying a home in Israel and getting a mortgage is not a simple process. Whether you're living outside of Israel or if you're living in Israel, the process of buying a home is different, it's complicated. And so what we set out to do is to offer a very personalized, customized service where you are, in essence, paired with your own personal advisor. It could be a real estate advisor if you're looking to buy, it could be an Aliyah advisor if you're looking to make Aliyah. And really, What we do is we guide you through the entire process from the early stages of planning your Aliyah, deciding what communities to move to, how to find schools, how to find a home, how to get a mortgage, how to open a bank account. And then if you're going through the Aliyah process, it's dealing with bureaucracy once you're here. So going to the government to get your benefits, to get your Taudat Zehut, your ID card, opening up a bank account, and then of course just providing ongoing support, because the bottom line is, for those of you who live in Israel, we all know the culture is different, the language is different, and people just need help, and that's okay. We're here to help you. And then when it comes to real estate, a lot of people aren't ready to make Aliyah at this point. They want to buy for investment purposes, or maybe down the road, or maybe for the kids, and they're looking for somebody to help them. They're looking for somebody that they can trust, somebody to guide them, and that's where we come in. We will also guide you through the entire process from beginning to end, from finding the communities, the properties, the developers, the projects, and really overseeing the project to make sure that you're getting the right, your right property that meets your needs, that meets your budgets. And we introduce you to our network of advisors. So we don't provide everything. We're not experts in everything. That's why we've partnered with a number of great people, great organizations. Each one of them is an expert in their field. Each one of them can provide you with the level of service that you need and deserve. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Natan and hand it over to Natan, who will talk to you about mortgages and give you some food for thoughts and some great tips.
All right. So thank you so much, Rafi. Mortgages are a super integral part of Aliyah, because obviously when you come here, one of your goals is to be a homeowner here in Israel. So I'm just going to give a bit of an overview to provide context, and then we can go through some of the kishkas of a mortgage. So at Levetach Mortgages, we do every type of mortgage, right? There's purchasing on paper, and there's purchasing secondhand, and there's refinancing if you want to, switch out your current mortgage for a different mortgage. You can do a self-build, meaning you're building your own home. You can do renovations, and that's obviously piggybacking right off what we were just all talking about. Renovations are a very, very, very big part once you own your home. And if years go by, you really want to make sure that your home is one that you're making your own. Pensioners and reverse mortgages, sometimes there's a bit of a misconception, actually, that you're not able to get a mortgage past a certain age. And that is partially true. It is harder to get a mortgage, but it's not a full stop at all. You're able to get a mortgage past 60. You're able to get a mortgage past 70. There are different types of mortgages for that, but those also exist. And then there's the non-banking lenders for, some of the more outlier cases, which we deal with as well. Sometimes you don't have enough financing and you want to use a non-banking lender, and those options do exist also. Throughout the process, our process is one where we really build really human connections with our clients. That's both because it's just nicer to work that way, but it also has an impact on the actual mortgage itself. Because in Israel, you have a lot of different options for the different subloans, right? So if in America, you have your 30-year fixed rate, and if, the UK, Canada, for example, you have a adjustable rate or a variable rate. Here in Israel, you can have multiple different subloans concocting the entirety of your mortgage. And while it sounds like it's a lot of options, if you approach it methodically and you approach it with a deep understanding of clients, then you're going to actually have a mortgage that fits really well, almost like a glove to a hand, and services you as you go throughout your life, because your mortgage is one of those things where it doesn't, last for just, 1 to 5 years. It's one of those 10, 20, 30-year endeavors that we take on. As we go through the mortgage process, again, there's lots of different flying pieces, and it's almost easy to get lost into the chaos. But at the end of the day, if you break down your mortgage into a methodical approach where you have your manageable details, you can actually work through and come to very clear, simple conclusions about what you should be doing throughout your mortgage process. And that's something that we do. We really accompany clients throughout the process so that they're not just, hey, we're going to trust Natan at Levetach Mortgages because he's the mortgage broker, but no, rather we explain things so that you have agency and you have a choice in what you're choosing. You understand what you're getting into. If we move on to the next slide, I just want to give a bit of background. And we brought this up in just the minutes before we started with the mortgage part of the presentation. But as somebody who obviously was born and grew up in America, I totally get it. I understand what you're going through. And that's something that's very important because, like I just mentioned, there's a very human aspect to the mortgage. There's the finance aspect, but at the end of the day, even part of buying your home, really what underlies that is you're buying to increase your quality of life. And that's a very human aspect of it. And so if we bring that in to the mortgage situation, to the financials, then it also creates a much more accurate picture of the mortgage that you would want. At the same time, and hand in hand with the very American approach that I bring when dealing with my clients, when it comes to dealing with Israelis, I whip out the more Israeli side of me. I went through full army service and probably one of the most Israeli places in the entire army. And I have a very, very deep understanding of the way that Israelis think about it. It's like what we call in Hebrew, it's a shuk, right? It's somewhat like a free-for-all. You have to have a bit of back and forth. You have to negotiate. And that's something that I really try and bring to the table because you don't always know what you're able to get, and you won't be told what the options are, even if you ask for the full list of options. So you need to have a really good detailed understanding of the full banking system here in Israel and what you're able to get. So at the end of the day, you get your American customer service, but just because I'm from America does not mean that the buck stops there. You get the Israeli business capabilities all under one roof. I want to get into a few tips before we wrap up and we open the floor for questions. Number one is to build a budget. And that's really important because I've seen lots of clients go through the whole process of trying to shop for a home and just come to me exhausted, right? After they shopped and they shopped and they shopped. And then we find out that, hey, you know what? Maybe their budget wasn't as accurate as they thought that they could get. And so it's really important to start out with building a budget first. And this really goes back to working methodically. If you have your budget, you know what price range to shop within, and you don't have to busy yourself with going around the country with all these different price points. You know what you should be honing in on. The second thing that I want to approach is not to get pre-approved with a bank before you speak to your broker. And I actually want to speak to the principle that underlies this tip, right? There are a lot of different parts of the mortgage process that if you deal with it early enough, you don't have to get into a mistake and then fix it, right? There's, I think, a pretty famous saying where it takes a genius to get out of a crisis, but you only have to be smart to avoid it from the get-go. And that's really true when it comes to the mortgage process, right? Because if you go through the process with your eyes open, you're just going to know what to sidestep and what to avoid. So something that I really, really stress is ask your questions earlier rather than later. Worst case scenario, and I say this to clients all the time, you can come back to me in 2 months, 3 months, even in a year from now, potentially, right? But at least you'll know what your next steps should look like. So it's not just going to the bank for a pre-approval. There's that, and that's definitely part of it. And I'll even explain why that's true. Once you go to a specific branch, you're actually locked in with that specific branch. And that branch may not be the best branch for you, sometimes because of the banker, sometimes because of your specific situation, but it's almost impossible to move from the branch that you approached to a different, better branch. And that's something that, like, I have done it. It's one of those things where I have to call in favors, and I'd rather not get into it in the first place because it's better to avoid those pitfalls. The third and last point, and this is almost an experiential point, right? The experience of getting a mortgage, it can go two different ways. It can be horrendous, or it can actually be very interesting, very stimulating, and almost calming, right? And one of the defining characteristics that I find is that when clients bring questions to the table, sometimes I see part of my job is trying to pull the questions out of clients to really engage so that you realize, hey, I actually do have a standing at this table. But if you bring your questions to the table, they're going to go a long way, right? You're going to actually get a better understanding of not just what you think you know, but even things that you didn't realize that you were able to get answers for, you can get those answers, right? Most questions, when it comes to mortgages, at least, I'm not, broaching anything philosophical about life, but when it comes to mortgages, most questions do have answers. So go for it, definitely ask those questions. They're going to help guide you. I want to end off. I was just saying that reach out earlier rather than later. Reach out to me. If you mentioned that you came through this webinar, we'll do a free consultation call. And I'm pretty generous with my time. If we need 15 minutes to go over, then we'll get it done within 15 minutes. But if we need more than that, if we need a half hour plus to go over your specific situation to make sure that we're not doing things in a generalized, glossed over manner, but in a way that really appreciates where you're coming from financially, physically, where you're coming from around the world, emotionally, where you are in the process, then we'll take the time to go through your specific situation so that you're taking the correct next steps. So that's it.
Great,
Natan,
Natan, thank you. And
mortgages.
of course, you can reach out to Natan here with the contact information, but even easier if you want to just type into the question and answer box, just mention me, Natan, you can type the word ME, and then we'll go through at the end of the webinar and really introduce people to the different professionals based on who you want to talk to. So make it super easy. And then we'll take some questions now. There's a question here about the process, right, of applying for a mortgage and how it's different from the US. So maybe, Natan, if you can hit on 2 of the 3 of the big differences, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so I think the 2 biggest differences are number one, the actual requirements, right? So as simple as it gets, here in Israel, you need a certain level of income. It's different from how it goes in the US. In the US, you have a certain level of down payment. It's different from here in Israel. So I'll give you the way that it works in Israel. Potentially not all of you are coming from the US, so I'll just say what we have here in Israel. For bank mortgages, for your very first home, and if you have Israeli citizenship, we're talking about a minimum of 25% down payment, a minimum of 25% down payment. And if you do not have Israeli citizenship, then you're not extended that same benefit that Israeli citizens get, which on some level makes sense. And you can get 50% financing. Again, like we said, there are non-banking lenders, so there are options to explore there, and the non-banking lenders are not limited by the same regulation. In terms of income, you need what I like to call 39% of your, just under 40%. I know that seems like a weird number, of your net income, right? So that's net after taxes, and it's net after any loans, expenses, mortgages, so on and so forth. You have to take those off as well and subtract them. And then from that, you use your 39%. Those are some of the big differences. And then the second thing is the different subloans, right? So generally people are used to doing, like a pretty standard 30-year fixed rate, for example. Here in Israel, you can do 30 years, you can do 29 years, you can do 20 years, you can do 15 years. And not only that, but you have different types of subloans. You can have fixed, you can have variable. Even within variable, you can have it vary overnight, once a year. I know it sounds like a lot and it sounds like a myriad of different options, but just know that you do have those options and they are to your benefit. You can choose to have those different subloans and make up your mortgage.
Okay, great. And I mentioned this in one of the previous sessions about the importance of having your ducks in order. And what I mean by that is, and mortgages is a big part of it if you want to take a mortgage, is that you want to make sure that you have all the pieces in place. So when you do see a home that you want to put an offer in, you can move quickly. So when we speak to people, we always recommend that they talk to Natan for mortgages and to Avram Levinsky, who is the real estate lawyer we refer people to, even if they're not interested in buying something right now. It's having that information that will guide your decision. And so Natan, as he mentioned, is very gracious with your time and he's happy to talk to you. And in some cases, he might tell you, look, based on what you told me, I don't think that you should get a mortgage. And that just comes down to his honesty and really trying to do right by the client. So if you're thinking about buying a home, it's really, I couldn't recommend it more strongly to reach out to Natan and to let me know. Have that initial consultation. There's no commitment, there's no cost. It's just really getting a sense of what's available, what's doable. And I can tell you from personal experience, the mortgage broker that I used many years before I met Natan saved me probably about 50,000 shekel over the life of a mortgage. So you're not talking about a few thousand shekel here and there. It's a significant saving. And because of what Natan mentioned, it's really like a shuk, like the food market that you go into where banks will negotiate and you'll walk away and you'll come back and they'll try and bring you back, and so somebody that has the experience in the context like Natan can really save you tens of thousands of shekel over a life of the mortgage. So definitely worthwhile having that initial discussion.
100%.
Let's see, any other questions here? So the question of just about the branches, and you touched upon it, but and I had to deal with this as well. If you can just explain that one more time. If you go to a branch and then you want to move, if you want to move to a different bank, it's less of a problem, of course. But if you want to move within the bank, right, it's more of
Yeah.
an issue.
So I find that sometimes people forget, or maybe we don't even think about that a bank, like anything else, is a business. So imagine any franchise, right? Each and every branch within that franchise has their own sales goals, right? So, for example, they want to hit yearly numbers, they want to hit monthly numbers, so on and so forth. And so, on a very, very basic level, a branch is going to want it's in their self-interest to hit those numbers. And if they have a mortgage come to their doorstep, you would think that it all falls under the umbrella of the larger franchise. And yet, on a simple, almost human level, the bank manager wants to keep the mortgage in-house because it's a potential, client. More than that, every every branch manager thinks that they're the best at doing mortgages. And so sometimes it's very hard to explain to them that there are other branches that you think are more appropriate. And so there's almost like a fine line to walk if I'm going to try and get a mortgage out of a certain branch. And there's no specific reason why the branch manager has to agree to those terms, right? Sometimes I just ask nicely, and sometimes, like I know higher up managers within banks, obviously, that can kind of lend a hand and provide backup when I'm asking to get a mortgage out of a certain branch. But it's just one of those situations where if you don't have to get into it, then there's no point in getting into it.
Right. And I know that there are some banks that are easier to work with, some banks that are more flexible, some banks that are more conservative, and that's part of it. It's not just about the rate, it's about getting first of the approval, because if somebody has income from abroad, some banks might be hesitant to give a mortgage to people in that situation. So, that's something where Natan, has the inside information, so to speak, can really guide you through that. Um,
Correct.
Another point I want to mention, and it kind of touches a few points that a few topics we discussed. So, if you're thinking about making Aliyah, your status could impact the mortgage that you get or the amount of money that you have to put down, as well as the purchase tax. And when it comes specifically to, to mortgages, being an Israeli citizen, being a resident is something that can impact your ability. So, Nathan, can you talk a little bit about that? I'm sure you talk to people who are thinking about making Aliyah, and what advice you would give to somebody who's thinking about making Aliyah, let's say within the next year.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel that Avram and I almost play like a tug of war, because from Avram, the real estate lawyer's perspective, after you make Aliyah, you have the tax benefit. And from my perspective, generally speaking, before you make Aliyah, generally speaking, you have higher income, and therefore you have more flexibility in terms of your mortgage. There are some ways around it, right? So for example, you can take out a part one of your mortgage, get it approved on your US income, and then kind of drag it out over a couple months. It's a bit, I don't know, like I don't want to say risky, but sometimes your Aliyah process doesn't follow the same timetable that you expect it to, and it gets dragged out a bit longer. Sometimes what I can do, without getting too into the nitty-gritty details here, is something called a hechzer hon, which is you can de facto recuperate some of the mortgage financing that you would have been eligible to get when you had first gone through with the mortgage, and for whatever reason you didn't. And so I actually use making Aliyah as one of those, reasonable situations where you want to recuperate it. So there is some flexibility there, and it really needs to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes your American income, while higher, may not be relevant because, for example, you're on the cusp of retiring and you're not going to take out the full-blown mortgage because, again, you want to have an eye for what's going to happen 10 years down the line when you're already retired with lower income. So those are just a few, I guess, anecdotes to kind of paint a bit of a picture. Sometimes you want to take out your mortgage before you make Aliyah. Sometimes you want to take out your mortgage after you make Aliyah. And sometimes it's not just about the mortgage, but it's the full coherent picture that spans between the mortgage and obviously the tax implications with Avram, the real estate lawyer.
Right. And as you mentioned before, it's not just about taking out that first mortgage, it's also about refinancing if you want to do that as well. So there's a question here about title insurance. And I know in the US, it all kind of gets lumped up together in the closing. Is it done the same way here in Israel, or is it done differently?
Israel is the Wild West. So here in Israel, all transferring of property rights, titles, so on and so forth, that all gets taken care of by us. And by us, I mean the client, but obviously, like I'm there with you throughout all of those steps. There's a lot of legal paperwork that needs to get shuffled back and forth. There's the appraisal, which needs to happen if it hasn't already happened. There's life insurance and and house insurance. Those are all things that are incumbent upon us to take care of. And there's actually there's pretty high importance to the timing of that, right? You don't want to necessarily do that too early. For example, you don't want to pay life insurance for an extra month if there's no need to do that, but you also don't want to wait to the last minute. All of those things are incumbent upon us to take care of. The bank is going to give us the forms and then kind of say, go take care of it, and you should know how to deal with the lawyers. It's one of the things that if it's your first time around, it seems very daunting. And I take the time to really sit with clients and explain, it's not just a document that you're signing, but there's some rationale behind it. And once I do that, it starts, turning from, something that's total Chinese, for example, into something that's really comprehensible. And so those are very, very different from the US. Those are things that we need to take care of here in Israel.
Okay. There's a question, and you touched upon this before, about somebody who is over the age of 70. You said there are options. It might be challenging, might be more expensive, but there are options. It's not an absolute no for mortgages or some sort of loan.
Correct. I'm going to give a very brief summary. I highly suggest reaching out because it's such a case by case basis. You can have what's known in Israel. First of all, potentially, if you don't need too much money, you can get a regular mortgage. Different banks have different age limits, but if you can spread the duration of your mortgage until 80, 82, 85, depending on which bank, then sometimes you can just get a regular mortgage for a shorter duration, maybe at the expense of higher monthly payments. That's a possibility. The more common options are what's known as pensioners' mortgages. In Bank Leumi, it's called Mashkanta Legila Shlishi, where you can get a specific type of mortgage at a slightly higher rate, but you can actually get it with a lower income test, right? So you don't need to show as high of an income as you would otherwise need to show. And finally, you have what's known as the reverse mortgage. Reverse mortgages surprisingly aren't that expensive these days. The big disadvantage with the reverse mortgage and the pensioner's mortgage is that you need to come with higher down payment, right? Sometimes that's totally fine. Sometimes it's a bit challenging, and that's one of those things that we generally have to talk out over the initial consultation call. There's actually a fourth option, which is sometimes you can include your kids as guarantors. Mizrahi Tzpachot has something called Hipuch Lovim. Bank Yerushalayim also has it actually, where you're able to actually put the mortgage on the shoulders of your children. And that also can have consequences. If the children are here in Israel, maybe that'll limit them getting mortgages if they've already taken out a mortgage. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. If they're in, the US or in some country overseas, it doesn't show up on their credit reports. It doesn't show because it's an Israeli institution providing Israeli financing. And so sometimes that's actually a pretty good workaround, where parents can buy the home, and they can have family members, siblings, children, as guarantors. And then we just have to juggle the numbers and see if those work out.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for tonight. I know there's some questions here. We're just running out of time, so definitely reach out to me, to Natan directly. We'll be happy to schedule a consultation call. So thank you, Natan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you can definitely jump off, and for those of you who want to stay on, we're going to be talking to Daniel Engelsman from Isra Transfer about transferring money to Israel. So definitely a very relevant topic. So feel free to stay on. So thanks, Natan. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you,
Have a good one.
Natan. And again, if anyone wants Natan to reach out to them, you can just write here me, and he'll reach out to you, or you can send us a private message.
Okay. We're gonna just take a few minute break here. We're gonna get set up with Daniel, and we'll get started with the next topic in just a few minutes. If you just joined us, if you can just introduce yourself, just let us know where you're from. If there are different topics, if there are other topics that you want us to cover, please feel free to let us know.
Oh, how's everyone doing? After 2 hours in.
I'm going strong. I love it. I'm telling you, such
1 hour to
information.
go.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
You're on mute.
Okay.
There you go. Can you just speak for a second? I just want to make sure I can hear you.
Sure. How's everyone doing?
Good, good. Baruch Hashem. Good.
Good.
Can you see the presentation? You can see the screen?
And indeed, yes.
Okay, so we'll just start in a couple of minutes.
No
Just wait
problem.
for some people to join us, and then we'll get going.
Daniel, where are you from?
That's my accent.
Well, we were talking with New Yorkers, and me and Rafi, even though we don't sound it or South African, and there's people from all over the world, so we want to hear where you're from.
I'm from London, from East London originally. So it's a bit different to Northwest London, where most of the Jewish community is these days. But yeah, that's where I'm from, although a long time ago now.
When did you
17
make Aliyah? Remind me.
17 years now.
Wow, amazing.
Wow,
Yeah,
so I think I came 15, well, we were here as kids, but then I came back in 2010, so you came just a few years before me.
yeah. But my Hebrew hasn't improved much in those 17 years. So
I don't say that.
I live in Renana and I work in English, so that's my excuse.
Oy vey vey.
If you just joined us, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. Just feel free to just introduce yourself and let us know if there's any other topics you want us to cover. Well, at the end of the webinar, we can download all the answers and then make sure that we match up people. And if you want to have a consultation call with either Daniel or Eitan, who works with Daniel, just go ahead and type me in the Q&A box, and then when we get the list, we'll be able to introduce you. We'll also have the contact information for Eitan at the end, and you can reach out to him directly.
And there will be a time for questions and answers afterwards, but if you have any questions in the meantime, you can type them in, and then we can direct them for Daniel at the end of his presentation. I think one more minute and we can start. Daniel, everyone's been very on time. I'm so impressed.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm British, so I have to be. There's no excuse for me, but
I
can't
know
talk to
we're
the
South
others.
African and we have to be, but not everyone else. And everyone's been early. It's so impressive. I love it.
Makes it easier to run.
Let's just give another minute for people to get on in case they're starting. Oh, here it's 9 o'clock. Maybe another 1 minute and then we can start.
If you just joined, we're going to get started in a minute. Just feel free to introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, and if there are any other topics you want us to cover. I also mentioned that it's so important to speak to our guests and the presenters one-on-one. It's just it's almost impossible to get into everyone's situation in these webinars, and so I really want to encourage you to strike the iron while it's hot, as they say. And as you're interested in the topic, as you're thinking about transferring money or buying a home or decorating your home or getting a mortgage, take advantage of the opportunity now. Just simply type me in the Q&A box, in the question and answer box. We will then do the rest. We'll introduce you to the different companies. And I think that's the key with anything, is if you really want to do something, you have to take the first step and start the journey. And that's what we're here for. So with that, I think we'll get started. So just for those of you who are just joining us, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rafi Schulman. I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors, and I'd like to introduce you to my partner who's joining me here, Laura Itzhaki.
Hi,
And
everyone.
I also want to introduce you to Daniel Engelsman, who's one of the owners of Isser Transfer, which is a large money transfer exchange company. Before I hand it over to Daniel, I just wanted to give you a brief overview, if you just joined us, as to who we are at Olim Advisors and why we host these webinars. So going back in time to 2016, Laura and I realized that making Aliyah and buying a home in Israel are two processes, two experiences that are challenging and daunting and overwhelming. And unfortunately, a lot of people just decide that it's not the right time, they're not going to move forward. And we wanted to do something about it. So we started Olim Advisors, with the goal of providing a very high-end, very personalized service where we actually will pair you with an Aliyah advisor or a real estate advisor who will guide you through the entire process. And I think that's important because a lot of people are looking for that hand-holding. It's not just about giving the information, but it's really about helping people through the process. So if you're thinking about making Aliyah now, even if it's down the road, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, let us help you. We will help you find the right communities. We will help you find the right schools if you have children of that age. We'll help you find a home, whether it's to rent or to buy. And then once you're in Israel, we will support you. We will guide you. We will help you deal with the bureaucracy that a lot of people have heard about and want to avoid. And it's opening up a bank account. It's getting your Taudat Zehut. It's getting your benefits. And then just providing ongoing support. And what we find is that a lot of people, even if they have friends and family in Israel, they recognize that it's a different culture, it's a different language, and people just like the fact that there's somebody that they can turn to. It gives them, in essence, peace of mind, which I think a lot of people are searching for. And that also applies to people who are looking to buy a home, whether it's for investment purposes or for making Aliyah down the road, or if you are making Aliyah now, we can help you navigate that process by introducing you to developers, finding communities and projects, and introducing you to a network of companies and individuals who just do an amazing job. They really care about helping people who want to buy, people who want to make Aliyah, people who are living here, and they provide really phenomenal service. So with that, I'd like to hand it over, Daniel, to you to talk about Israel Transfer and the services that you provide.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me on this. It's been quite a day with what's been going on in this country. So yeah, it's a good day in many ways. But you know, a little bit related to the war. You know, many people we've found are looking to purchase a home in Israel since the war started. Also, COVID as well pushed a lot of people to purchasing a home in Israel. And we've really seen a big uptick over the last 15 months of people either making Aliyah or looking just to have that home in Israel. So a little bit about ourselves, about Israel Transfer. I am one of the founders of Israel Transfer. I'm originally from the UK. We started the company in 2008. Since then, you know, since day one, we've been fully licensed by the Capital Markets Insurance and Savings Authority. The regulator has actually changed a couple of times over that period and is actually going to change again by the end of this year. But you know, whenever you're looking to use a company to move your money, you need to make sure that they're completely licensed in Israel to do that for you. As I said, you know, we've seen a big uptick in people purchasing properties, and I'm going to concentrate what I'm talking about today, focused on people buying property and the transfer of funds for a property purchase. I mean, I know a lot of people have the need when they make Aliyah as well, and it's fairly similar process, but I'm going to concentrate on the process which we actually specialize in for people buying a home in Israel. And yeah, if you go on to the next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so the main thing I want to just cover is understanding the exchange rates and the impact that they can have for you when you're purchasing a property. So if we go on to the next one. Yeah, so in the early 2000s, all property prices were started to be quoted in shekel. Before that, there were a lot of properties purchased in dollars, and that's why we have what's called the Shayat Sig. One of the founding reasons for the Shayat Sig, which is on the Bank of Israel website, it was published so that they could understand on the day of exchange what the amount of shekel someone would have to give the seller based off of the agreed price in dollars. But ever since the early 2000s, almost exclusively all prices are in shekel. A lot of people don't think about the exchange rate until one of the latter stages. Obviously, quite rightly so, they need to find the right community, the right home, make sure they can afford the property in terms of the mortgage. But the exchange rate has a big impact and factor on your purchasing power in Israel. I'm going to concentrate on US dollar, but the same goes for the pound, especially since Brexit. Big fall in the exchange rate on the pound. But in November 2021, we saw a low of just below 3.1 on the exchange rate. And we were in a situation where we had actually some clients that were pulling out of deals because the rate had gone so low that they actually couldn't afford the next stage of their apartment, or they'd made just a small deposit and they decided to pull out. And they hadn't thought about, the impacts of the exchange rate. So one good example is when you're purchasing on paper, you're normally buying over a course of a 3, 4, 5-year period even. And just because the exchange rate today is a certain rate, it doesn't mean that when you need to make those stage payments, that the exchange rate is going to be the same as it is today. It will almost certainly be very different to what it is today. And as you can see in the example on the screen, from November 2021 to November 2023, the exchange rate was swung by 25%. Now, on $100,000, that's a lot of money, but we all know that properties aren't $100,000. You're talking probably $1 million, and 25% on $1 million is a big difference and impact. So there are some tools that you can use to try and hedge this. Some people, instead of buying the currency at the time that they need the money, when the exchange rate gets to a favorable rate, they may lock in the rates there and then in order to protect themselves against any downward swings in the exchange rate. If we could just move on to the next one, please, Rafi. This example here, this is the graph over the last 2 years. And I just thought it was very important to show how political factors can affect the exchange rate. There's lots of different factors that do affect the exchange rate. But if you look at the, very clearly, October the 7th had a big impact on the exchange rates, where you see in the middle of the screen, big jump to the 4.07 that we saw when the attacks happened. At the moment, the exchange rate's come down to about 3.48, I think it was on Friday's close. Now, that's because good news is coming out of Israel, and the shekel is strengthening on the back of that. So these things that are happening at the moment have an impact on the exchange rate. Tomorrow, Donald Trump is inaugurated. What he may or may not do will impact the exchange rate as well. As the next 6 weeks develop with the ceasefire, if it's is steady, I would expect the exchange rate to stay around the 3.5 level, because the shekel is going to stay strong because it's a positive thing for Israel. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so banking is a bit different to what you're probably used to, whether you're in the US, UK, wherever it may be. One of the big things is the language barrier, of course. And the customer service is very different to what you're used to. When you transfer money to Israel, you are required to present certain documentation. And if you communicate directly with your bank, in most cases, there are some very good banks and bankers out there. In most cases, if you transfer money, they're going to tell you what documentation you need after they've received the money, and potentially hold up your funds for a period of time. It's really important to speak to someone that can tell you ahead of time what documentation is required for the amount of money that you're looking to transfer. You don't want to delay, the closing of your property or wherever it may be, because documentation hasn't been thought about beforehand. Now on to the next one. Ooh. Okay, so other factors to consider when you're looking to transfer funds. you need to do your due diligence on how you're transferring that money. Which company you're going to use, make sure they're reputable firm and they're regulated in Israel or potentially overseas as well. When you want to open an account with a company like us, we have to know our customer. We have to do certain paperwork to identify you and ask you certain questions. So just bear that in mind in your timescale. That can take a couple of days potentially. Source of funds, which is what I alluded to on the previous slide a little bit. When you transfer funds to Israel, you will need to prove the source of your money. Some banks are a bit stricter than others. With us, we are very keen to make sure that the client is aware, and we actually ask for the documents before the client even sends money. We strongly believe that if we do it that way, as soon as you transfer the money, there's not going to be any questions about the funds that have come to us, so that the bank will be able to clear the funds the same day, hopefully. Whereas if you do it afterwards, it could cause delays. Sometimes you need the use of a notary in order to verify certain documentation or to help us verify your identity as well. So as I said at the very beginning, I was going to concentrate a little bit on purchasing of a home. Now, obviously, you need to make any payment in shekel, and if you've got money in a different currency, you'll need to convert that money from pounds, dollars, whatever it may be, into shekel. So we help you do that. We help you save money in that process. And we have had some cases in the past where people have got very good deals with their US bank, where they're not even charging them anything for it. So it would have been, it's even a little bit more expensive to use us in that case, but people have still used our service, because when you're transferring money for the purchase of a property, if you're buying on a off plan, you need to pay with a special shovar. It's a special voucher booklet. And in order to pay with that booklet, you need to go to the bank and have it stamped. And we offer that service for people. Just to clarify what a shovar is, or what these vouchers are, it's the form of a bank guarantee. So that when you're transferring funds and to a builder, at different stages, the bank is guaranteeing that money, so that if the builder was to go bankrupt, that your money is safe and secure. The other method that we can help clients with is to produce a bank check. So when you're purchasing second-hand property, often at signing, the seller wants a bank check. So we can provide bank checks for people in Israel, in shekel, to help them with that process. So that's not me, that's Eitan, who works with me. Both myself and Eitan are available. If anyone's got any questions, needs any help, happy to talk through the process, whether it's for a property purchase, for Aliyah. It's fairly similar, but yeah, we're here to help, and we've done a lot of property transactions. I believe we looked the other day, and we're approaching 3,000 property transactions that we've done. So, we definitely know what we're talking about on this subject.
I can speak from personal experience. I've used Isser Transfer when I transferred money for my sales of a home and also our business. We transfer money through Isser Transfer, and it's really the combination of great customer service, good rates, and we've been very happy. So thank you, Daniel. If anybody here is listening, if you want to schedule an appointment, you can either contact Eitan or Daniel directly. We will send out a recording of the webinar with everyone's contact information, so you'll have that. Or if you want, you can just type me into the word me, M-E, into the question and answer box, and we will make sure that we introduce you. We do have a few minutes for questions now. So there's a question here about transferring money on an ongoing basis. So you talked about a lump sum if somebody's buying property, but can you also talk a little bit about the services for people who need to transfer, money on a monthly basis or every now and then, and what you provide,
Sure. So the documentation in terms of us having to meet someone remains the same. The only thing that differs slightly is what documents we might need for your source of funds. So if it's on a regular basis, if it's from pension or from your wages that you're still working in the US or overseas, and you need to bring your funds over to Israel, we will need certain documentation, but the process is pretty much the same. You'd ask your bank overseas to transfer the funds, possibly to our account here in Israel. We do have accounts overseas as well that you could potentially make a local deposit of the funds. And then you have full access on our online portal where you can convert the money when you want to, and then transfer the funds onto your account in Israel when you want to. It can also be automated as well. Some people like it automated. Some people want to take more control over when they convert the funds because they want to take more control of the exchange rate.
Got it. Thank you. And there's a question that you touched upon before and about hedging. And just to explain to people who aren't familiar with the concept, hedging is if you're transferring a certain currency and you're concerned about the fluctuation, then there's ways that you can in essence, protect yourself. So maybe if you can just expand upon that just briefly and let people know how they
Sure.
can do that with you.
I will very briefly. It's a very complex subject. There's lots of different tools available to people. Some people like to hedge in essence in terms of if they know that they need to make a conversion of, let's call it $300,000 over the course of the next month, they may split it into three thirds and convert a third now, a third at the end, and then the middle third, they might, keep a close eye on the exchange rate and maybe just do it in the middle of that period to try and average out a better exchange rate. Some people, when the exchange rate becomes of a level that they're very happy with, or what they've budgeted at, or above what they've budgeted at, will, like, if they've got access to the funds, will often convert a large proportion of that money to make sure that they've locked in that exchange rate. There are other things like forwards and options, which are just much bigger subjects for us to talk about here.
Right, right. And one of the things you just mentioned, which I tell everyone as well, is that it takes a little while to open up the account and transfer the funds. And so what I recommend to everyone is to get the paperwork out of the way, to contact Eitan at Esser Transfer, Daniel, find out what you need, what documentation, and then if you have the funds available, transfer them, and you can keep them in dollars or pounds, right, or Australian dollars, and then when you feel the time is right, then you can transfer at that point. So I think that's an important thing to mention here as well, right, Daniel, is to get the funds over to you so that way when you want to transfer the money, exchange the money, it's really just a click of a button or a phone call away, and you can do it at that point in time.
Correct, yes. I mean, look, get the paperwork out of the way so that I wouldn't always necessarily tell someone to transfer the money if they're not sure over the next few weeks. As long as we've got the paperwork sorted, that as soon as they transfer the money, we've already pre-approved their funds, that it'll be available within a few hours of us receiving the money, and then they can convert it straight away. Especially with the interest rates the way they are, a lot of people like to hold on to the funds where they're earning interest overseas until they need it. But definitely get all the paperwork done so that as soon as you're ready, you could have access to the funds within 24 hours.
Got it. Okay, great. Let's get to some of the other questions here. Laura, is there anything else here that you...
I see here it says, I'm not sure if you covered this, if you convert the money and it sits in as a transfer account, is there a protection on the money, like FDIC?
So there's nothing like FDIC in Israel. We are regulated in Israel by a division of the Bank of Israel. Also, the regulator is actually changing again for the second time in about 3 years, a much stronger regulator, which we're very happy about because we think that the stronger the regulator, the better. At the moment, we have requirements to have certain minimum capital requirements in the company at all times. And as part of the new regulation, we're already acting with segregated bank accounts, but they're enforcing it to all companies that get the new license as well. So that's it. But there's nothing like FDIC insurance for these types of companies in Israel.
Okay. There's a question here about transferring an inheritance where they don't have the documents to back it up. I assume it's a situation that you can help them try and resolve. Can you talk a little bit
Yes,
about the situations that aren't the typical vanilla situations?
sure. Look, we deal with lots of very different situations. Inheritance, I guess it depends whether it is recent or from a long time ago. If it's within the last 5 years, there's a couple of ways of dealing with it. Normally, a CPA letter or a lawyer who dealt with the estate potentially could write a letter confirming the source of the money. If it's from a much longer period ago, still a CPA letter could potentially work. Also, maybe bank statements showing the money from maybe 7 years ago coming into your account, or if it's from 20 or 30 years ago, it's a much different situation. We'd have to really speak to you to completely understand it and find what would be suitable for the banks to clear the money. But there's always an answer. There's always a way to sort it out.
And then people asking about the fees, like what's the fee, and if there's a larger fee for a smaller transfer, is there a minimum transfer? If you could just address of those.
Okay, so normally our standard fee is 0.75% for amounts less than $90,000, and 0.5% for amounts greater than that. But I believe we give a discount to members of Olim Advisors. So anyone that comes to us, I believe it's a 10% discount off of that fee.
Correct. Yeah. So just make sure that you mention that you heard about Oyster Transfer through Olim Advisors, and you'll get that discounted rate as well. So that's a nice little perk. Okay. Let's see here. And then there's questions about do you need to have a bank account in Israel before you transfer the funds? I know that developers, sometimes you can transfer the money directly to developers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. A lot of our clients don't open a bank account in Israel. I think it's advantageous to have a bank account in Israel, but a lot of people decide not to open an account. We can make virtually every payment you need directly to whoever needs the money for your property purchase. The only thing that we can't do is sometimes there's certain Arnona payments that are required that we can't make those payments because they come on special vouchers that we're unable to pay. But apart from that, we can pretty much make any payments that you need. It's not a bank account that we offer. You don't have to, you can hold money and make all the relevant payments. But when you are paying a third party, we do need to check that third party, where they're located, and do a few checks on the third party that we're paying. But we can make all those payments for people.
Okay, great. There's a question here about transferring retirement benefits or retirement funds from Canada, not from the US. So is that something that you offer?
Yes, we can help. We do have a minimum transfer. Our normal minimum is $10,000, but if you're coming to us through Olim Advisors, it's $5,000. And yes, it's the same process as in the US. You would ask your bank in Canada to transfer the funds to our account, and we'd then treat it the same as we do any other currency.
Okay. One more question, and I think then we're going to have to end it just to move on. And of course, we can continue the conversation. But I know it's come up a few times in conversations that I have of people consider transferring money, let's say in the US, UK, into from the local currency into shekel and then transferring in shekels. Can you talk about, how much more expensive that is, or the difference between doing that locally and then transferring the currency to an Israeli bank versus doing it through you?
Sure, absolutely. So look, there's normally 3 ways that you can transfer funds to Israel in shekel. You can either convert the money in the US and then transfer the shekel to wherever it needs to get to. You could send the money in dollars to a bank account here in Israel and then convert it at the bank here, or you could use a company like us that can make those conversions for you. Typically, the most expensive route is converting it in the US or locally and then sending the shekel. The main reason for that is it's not a major currency for these countries. So the fee, I've seen clients being charged 4, 5, 6% on the spread on the exchange rates when they've converted money overseas and then sent the shekel. Locally, with a local bank, you're probably looking at about 1.5 to 2%. And as I said, with us, it's normally 0.5% for larger amounts of money. The other thing to consider, which I spoke about before, is that and I know that a lawyer that we all work with had this situation not so long ago. His client converted the money in the US, but he needed to pay a shovar, which is a voucher for a property purchase here in Israel. And the client had the money in shekel in America, but he had nowhere to send the money to pay this shovar, because the shovar has to be paid locally in a Israeli bank. He had to open a trust account for the client urgently, which takes a long time sometimes, in order to facilitate the payment of that shovar. So while sometimes you might get a very good deal with your bank locally overseas, you've got to factor in what type of payments you need to make as well, because you could delay the whole process by doing it locally rather than in Israel.
Got it. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Daniel. Thanks so much for your time and advice. And
Pleasure.
we'll put you in touch with anybody that wants to get some more information. So thanks so much, and
Thank you
have
for
a good
joining
night
us.
and a good week.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye. Take care.
Okay, moving on to the next topic here. We're going to talk with Adam Perlman from Sonigo International Shipping Company. And so give us a moment just to set up. And if you're just joining us, if you can just introduce yourself, let us know where you're from, where you live, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes.
This is our final session.
Last but not least.
Hi,
Hi.
Adam. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Can you see the screen?
I see the screen. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great. We'll
Great.
get started in a couple of minutes. So sit tight.
There you go.
If you're joining us for the session on shipping and you have questions, go ahead and type your question into the Q&A box and we'll get to it. Adam will answer some questions after he presents in a few minutes, so we'll do that. Also, as we've done in the previous sessions, we really encourage you to have a one-on-one conversation with any one of the professionals, with any of the topics that interest you. So go ahead and just let us know. You can type a little message into the question and answer. You can just type me and Adam, and we'll just, when we are done with the webinar, we'll go through all the requests and we'll make sure that you get a chance to talk to people. I think it's really important as you're going through the process of making Aliyah, shipping things to Israel, take advantage of the opportunity to learn more about it and have your questions answered. We'll just wait for people to come in and we'll get started in a minute or so.
Adam, where'd you make Aliyah from and when? We're asking each one.
Are we live or just ask? You're just asking.
We are live, but
Yeah.
we give it a minute or so. So you've got 60 seconds to let us know where you came from, when.
I made Aliyah in 1990 when I was 22, and by myself. My parents and my family are still in the States, and I came from Western Massachusetts, not a real hub of Jewish life, but there's a lot of very academic. It's a lot of universities and academics. So there are a lot of Jews there, but that's where I came from. That's where I grew up.
Very nice.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So for those of you who are just joining us now, I just want to take a moment and introduce myself. My name is Rafi Shulman, and I'm the co-founder of Olim Advisors. My partner, Lar Itzhaki, is here along for the ride and helping me, so thanks so much. And I'd like to take a moment and introduce you to Adam Perlman, who works for Sonigo International. So welcome, Adam, and thanks for joining us tonight. Before we get started, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of a background about Olim Advisors for those of you who are just joining us and explain to you why we do these webinars. And the reality is that when Laura and I first started back in 2016, we recognized, and we know this firsthand because we also made Aliyah, making Aliyah is a challenging process. There's a lot of decisions that one has to make. And unfortunately, a lot of people just look at it and say, you know what, I'm just not going to do it now. Maybe down the road when the kids are out of the house or when I'm retired. And it's a shame because what we found is that with the right guidance and the right information, you can absolutely go through this process. And that is why we set out to help people. What we do is we provide a very high-end, very personalized service where we will pair you with somebody, with an advisor, whether it's an Aliyah advisor, or if you want to buy a home, we will help you with that process as well. And your advisor will guide you from beginning to end, from the early decisions about how to find a community, how to find schools, what to ship, and Adam will talk about that in a moment, to dealing with bureaucracy once you get here. So you don't have to deal with all the headaches that people have to deal with, and we will really smooth it out for you and expedite the process. And of course, just being here to provide you with ongoing support and guidance is so important. And we do that with Aliyah and also with buying. A lot of people who want to buy a property, especially after October 7th, we've seen really an increase in people who want to have a connection to Israel. They want to have a home in Israel, whether it's for making Aliyah or just down the road or a vacation home for their kids. And so we help you with that process. We help you identify communities that would be suitable. We'll help you identify investment opportunities and really guide you and oversee the transaction. And probably most importantly, we will introduce you to our network of partners. So a lot of the guidance and the help that we provide aren't done directly through Olim Advisors and our staff. We will introduce you to people who are experts in their field, who really want to go above and beyond to help you and guide you, and in essence, make your dream of buying a home or making Aliyah come true. So with that, I'd like to hand it over, Adam, to you to talk about shipping to Israel and some important things to know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rafi, and thank you for Olim Advisors for organizing the webinar tonight. As you saw, my name is Adam Perlman. I made Aliyah from the States in 1990, and I've been working with Olim and helping people with shipments for about 17 years now. So I've been doing it for quite a while. I work for Sonigo International, which is we are a full service moving company based near the main port in Israel, which is in Ashdod, which is where most shipments will come into, unless you're moving to the north, we would send them to the port of Haifa. So we're based in Ashdod, and we've been in business since 1986. We have a lot of experience moving with Olim. We have several people that are advisors to Olim in their moves. We also do all kinds of other international shipping like fine art and diplomatic moves. And we're a full service company with our own storage facilities, our own delivery teams, and our own in-house customs clearers, which is a part of the process is getting everything through customs. So there are a number of reasons why working with us is unique, and we have certain real advantages in where we're situated. And in order to explain that to you, I want to give you a little bit of a background about how international shipping works, because it's not always clear to people because people come into the process of sending a shipment. It's usually once in their life. It could be twice. And you'll see as an Oleh Hadash, you get 3 tax-free shipments over the course of your Aliyah for the first 3 years. You get 3 tax-free. When I say tax-free, that means you don't pay customs taxes, which is significant. It can be a significant amount of money on a larger shipment. Certainly, it's thousands of dollars. So basically, what I saw is that um, people coming into this process of moving, in some ways, people tell me that it's one of the most stressful parts of their move because it's their personal possessions. So people, it's really important, as you can see here in the slide, with the challenges, is you want to get yourself into a situation where you have peace of mind, because the move to Israel, the actual move itself, it's so there's so much flux in a person's life. People always say that to me. They say, I'm really sorry, but I've been sort of so involved in so many different things and I haven't called you." I tell them, don't worry about it. Everybody says that, right? Because you're moving your life, you're changing jobs, changing schools, changing, selling houses, buying houses. There's so much. So the usually the last thing that people do is think about the shipment, and you really want to have yourself be in good hands that give you peace of mind. That's so one of the things to do that, the ways to do that is to learn about the process, right? And the first thing that I would say in order to learn about the process is to understand that international moving, unlike local moving, like if you've moved domestically wherever you are, then there's one company that you use, right? That does the whole move. In international shipping, it's different. It's there's always a third party. There's always a second company involved because nobody has a presence all over the globe, right? So we're in the business of international shipping. So we have a network of other companies. It's a different company than us that is everywhere in the world. We can ship to or from anywhere in the world, right? Because we have this network. And so let's say you turn to a company. I'll give you two examples of how you could approach a move to Israel and how different they are. And because you could go to a local company where you're located. If we just use the example, let's say somebody in New York, and you look at a local international mover, and you say, I would like to get a quote for door-to-door shipping to Israel. So that company is going to have to use another company for the part of the move that's happening in Israel, right? You have an origin and a destination. And so if the company you're talking to is at the origin, it's going to be a different company at the destination. The opposite is true. Let's say you talk to me and at Sonigo, because we're based here in Israel, so we're at the destination. So if you asked us for a quote, I'm going to have to use another company, the agent that I use in, let's say, in our example, in New York, to do that part of the move for me. But still, whatever company you sign a contract with, they are taking overall responsibility for the whole move. So that third party company is acting as an agent. They're acting as my agent. So you don't deal with them in terms of costs or payments at all. Like in the example with me, because I'm in Israel, so my local agent would do the packing, and he's going to give, after doing a survey, the first stage in getting you a quote is to have a free survey done, which we used to do physically, like make an appointment and come to your house. Since COVID, it's largely moved over to doing it by Zoom, which is fine. It works perfectly well, but there are some places that still do it with a physical appointment. But that's the first stage where we assess the needs of your move. And in the example that I gave, so that packer in New York is going to be just giving me the prices, and you're going to be hiring one company to do the whole move door to door, which, first of all, I really recommend doing only a door to door move because it's much simpler. It's much easier to ensure your shipment. There are ways of doing partial moves, but you don't want to get into that. You want to go door to door. Okay, so somebody coming into the shipping world, I realized that there's all this information that they need that they don't have. They've never done it before. They don't know how it works. And so I started giving a lecture at the Nefesh B'Nefesh mega events, which they used to have every year before COVID. And I used to give a talk there that was like a crash course in everything you need to know about shipping, which has now moved to be an online webinar. And so I give that webinar about once a month. And at the end of the slides, we're going to show you, if you'd like to attend that webinar, like today's session is about a half hour with me presenting a little bit and then some questions and answers. But the longer webinar is about an hour and a half. And even that is like, I don't get to cover everything, but it's really like a crash course. And with it, if you sign up for the webinar, I also give you a whole information pack where we have a written guide and a volume estimator, and a list of things that you can bring or that you can't bring. So if you just register and and of course you get a recording of the webinar itself. So yeah, so I would encourage you to sign up for that webinar. And so we're based here in Israel, right? And there are reasons that I think is better. In the examples that I gave you, you could see that if you hired a company that was based in New York, so if you don't think to ask the question, so who am I going to be dealing with in Israel? You might not even think about it because you hired the company in New York, but they're going to be sending you to their agent in New York. And if you don't know who you're dealing with, if they're not a company that works with Olim, they might not speak English, they might not be familiar with the more complicated part of the move from a technical perspective is in Israel because you have tax-free shipping rights. So we have to get your documentation from you. When you make Aliyah, one of the first things that happens is on the plane, you get your new Tudat Zuhut and Tudat Oleh, and which is your Israeli ID, like your social security card, and your Tudat Oleh is the card that you'll use that for all the rights you get as an Oleh. So in terms of getting your shipment through customs, you won't need to go anywhere. It's all done by emails these days, but you will need to get those documents to us and send them to us by email. And then we do all of the work in front of customs for you. We manage your shipment for you, but you're going to need to provide those documents once you get to Israel, because if you didn't have those documents, if you didn't have your status as an Oleh Hadash, you wouldn't get tax-free shipping. Okay, so Sonigo is sort of uniquely positioned in that we really have our own delivery teams. So you'll know exactly who you're working with, meaning it's our teams, our trucks and our teams delivering, and you'll have a person that is your move manager from the beginning of the move to the end of the move. That'll be there to take care of you if anything comes up, and so that already is peace of mind for you, that you know exactly who you're dealing with through the whole process. In addition, Sonigo, we're members of multiple international shipping organizations. You can see on the slide, it's called FIDI, which is the oldest and the most prestigious of all of the international moving organizations. There's others as well, but that's the one that FIDI really stands. You know you're dealing with a high-level shipping company. You know that they do external audits to make sure that we're working to certain standards, and that financially we're solvent, and that our moving services are at certain standards. So all of that really goes into giving you peace of mind. So one of the main pieces of advice by attending this webinar, and hopefully you'll keep researching the subject as you get closer to making a shipment, is to educate yourself. That's what the webinar that I give is for, and the guide. I have a written guide on our website. Talking to other Olim will really help you figure out what's the best type of shipment for you. And I'm just going to touch upon really briefly the options that you have in making a shipment. I go into this in a lot more detail in the webinar, but one of the main parts of the webinar is that, just so you know, there's only two categories of shipments in international shipping. There are these big containers, these metal containers, shipping containers that you see sometimes on trucks and things like that. So there's two ways that you could send your stuff to Israel. One is called an FCL shipment. That's a technical term from the shipping world that means a full container load. And that all that means is that it's inside the container, it's only your stuff. There's nobody else's stuff in that container. It's only your stuff. The other way to do it is what's called a partial container, or an LCL, which means less than a container load, which basically just means that there's multiple people's stuff in that container, and because the shipping companies want to do it in the most efficient way, they use the largest container for those partial containers, which are sometimes called a consolidation or a lift. And so there might be 5 or 6 people's stuff in those larger partial containers. The reason why I focus on this in the webinar so much is these two types of shipments are really different. They have really different characteristics, both in terms of the timing, and in terms of the pricing, and in terms of certain things that you need to really watch out for pitfalls. Like if you are going into a partial container, like one of the pitfalls that I always say is, if you go in a partial container, it's a decision to keep your shipment small and save money. Because in a partial container, you pay by how much space you take up in the container. You don't just have your own container that you can fill up. So if you forget that principle on packing day, like if you got a quote for a certain size, but you ended up putting more stuff into the shipment on packing day, which you're welcome to do. You can take things out as you like. You can add things or take things out of the shipment, but your price will go way up if you forget that principle and add too much stuff in a shared container. Whereas in your own container, it's pretty much more of a flat price, where it's your container, it's only your stuff. So here we have in this slide, there's only two sizes of containers. There's really a third one, but I'll tell you why I said there's two. There's a 20-foot long container, and there is a 40-foot long container. Now, one thing to remember in shipping, it doesn't go by the weight. It goes by the size, which is measured in cubic feet. Or if you're in the rest of the world outside of the UK and the USA, cubic meters. But it's still a measurement of volume, not weight. Weight does come into the picture if you have a really heavy item like a piano or something. But in general, it's the size of the shipment that matters. And you can see here a couple examples. The 20-foot long container has, just so you start to learn how cubic feet works, because you're probably not familiar with it right now, is there's 1,000 cubic feet in that 20-foot container. That, if you're in cubic meters, it's 30 cubic meters, is the same thing as 1,000 cubic feet. And that's roughly the contents of like a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. So often a family, like a middle-aged family, would send a 20-foot container. If you go over the capacity of a 20-foot container, like in the survey, when we do a survey, if we see that you have 1,400 cubic feet, we're going to give you a quote in a 40-foot long container that has a capacity of 2,000 cubic feet and is roughly the contents of like a full 4 or 5 bedroom home. I mentioned that there's another container. It's still a 40-foot container, but it's called a 40-foot high cube container, which is a bit taller, and it gives you about 10% more space if you need it. So those are the two types of shipments if it's your own container. In a really small shipment, in a shared container, starts at about 200 cubic feet. That's basically the smallest shipment that you can send in shipping, unless you live near a port, because I can do smaller shipments if you can bring stuff to the port. But if we come out and pick up your stuff and pack it, the minimum size is 200 cubic feet, which is about 40 medium-sized boxes. And just to give you a little bit of a sense of the prices we're talking about, a 200 cubic foot shipment door to door from New York is around $3,000. A 20-foot container, which is 1,000 cubic feet, is around $9,000. And a full 40-foot container from New York is probably around $13,000. And that's door to door. We do full packing. We provide all the packing materials, shipping, all the standard fees along the way. without any surprises. The only thing that's not included in those numbers is your marine insurance, which you also do through your shipper. So again, if you hire a company that's based where you started from, let's say in New York, the insurance company, if you have an insurance claim, is going to be in the States, right? Whereas, again, we're based in Israel. Our insurance company is based here in Israel as well. So they're here and we work with them all the time. Okay, so that is al regel echad, as we say. A quick overview. Like I said, you can see here on the slide, if you go to that link there, webinar at Adam J. Perlman, there you can register for my more extensive webinar, which I have one coming up next Sunday. And then I give one every 3 weeks or so, every 3 weeks to a month. Or if you don't want to do the webinar, you have all my contact information here. I'm on WhatsApp and email. I am based in Israel, so just remember that. So yeah, so if you guys have questions and answers, we were going to open it up for that at this point. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you, Adam. So the first question here we have is about is there premium charge for bringing TVs, electronics, things like that? How does that work?
Okay, so basically, if you're making Aliyah, like I mentioned, that you get customs taxes off the goods that you bring. There's no limit basically for all normal stuff that's in a household. Like everything you can think of in a household, whether it's clothing, rugs, pictures, dishes, pots and pans, all furniture, beds, and all of that stuff, there's no limit. If it's really, what will be a limit is if there's a red flag that it looks like you're doing it to sell something. That would be, if you're just a couple and you're bringing in 20 beds, that would be a red flag for customs. But a lot less, but you could still be a couple and have, a lot of grandchildren, and you have a house where you need beds for your grandchildren. You could have 10 beds. You could have your family come visit you, and that's perfectly fine. But 20 beds would be a red flag. But in terms of electronics, they've now TVs and computers. There's basically, they give you a limit of like 10 now. It just went up. So TVs or computers, laptops I would bring on my person on the plane, but people do put computers into their shipments and they're not taxed. Other electronics besides TVs and computers, you only get one of each thing over the course of your 3 shipments. So let's say you wanted, a meat and a milk oven. You can bring in a second oven, but you're going to pay taxes on it, which means 17%. So it's not the end of the world, but you're going to pay 17. You're going to get one oven tax-free and one fridge tax-free, and you could bring in a second one, but you would pay 17%.
Got it. Okay, there's a
Adam,
question here. Go ahead.
we do have quite a few questions, so if we could just go through them quickly. How long does it usually take to ship? When should a family set to move furniture, and when can it be expected to arrive from New York to Jerusalem? Just an average.
Very, very good and important question for people's planning. The big thing, remember I mentioned in my presentation that there are these 2 different types of shipments, the partial container and an exclusive container. So an exclusive container, no matter where it is in the world, is always faster than a shared container. Shared containers, by definition, take longer. And not only they take longer, but they're more unreliable in terms of the timing. The reason for that is we have to wait until we have enough stuff to fill up a container in order to send it. And if you're sending in the winter, there's less cargo. Most people ship in the summer. So there's a lot more shipments going out. So in a shared container, it can take a lot longer in the winter. So be aware.
What if
of
it's
that.
just your own container, not a shared? Then what would be?
It's about 2 months door to door from
Okay.
New York, but it's almost like I sometimes compare it to like airplane carriers, that there are multiple carriers that will bring a container across the ocean, and some take longer and some take shorter. So I often give people an option, and some people really want it, that we can use the carrier that's called Zim, which is the Israeli ocean freight company. It's more expensive. It's like $800 more for a 20-foot container and almost $2,000 more for a 40-foot container. But instead of being 2 months door to door, it's about 6 weeks door to door.
Okay, so about 6 to 8 weeks, you're saying.
For a full container, and for a shared container, I usually say average 3 months, but in the winter it can be 4 months.
Okay, and then just people asking just if you can give like a list of 3, 4 things that you would not recommend shipping to Israel.
Sure. People used to bring appliances. I don't think I personally would not bring appliances anymore. If the only time that I maybe would is if I was building my own house and remodeling it, and then you might, and especially if you want high-end appliances like a Sub-Zero refrigerator and you have space in your lift, you could save some money. But people bring a lot less appliances than they used to. There's a lot more available in Israel. Other things, all the small stuff in a kitchen. I personally, there may be other people that have a different opinion, but let's say you have really good small appliances like in your kitchen, and you really want to bring them. In order to use them in Israel, you're going to need to use a transformer. A transformer costs a few $100s. I find them very bulky. They get dusty. I have to find it just to use my food processor. Even though some people are sad that they have to sell all their small stuff and start over, I recommend starting over in Israel with small appliances as well.
Okay, great. So I think we're at the top of the hour now, or the end of the hour. And so thank you, Adam. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's great information. If anybody wants to speak to Adam directly, you have his contact information here that you can reach out to them or reach out to me. We will be recording this webinar and sending it out to everybody. And so you'll be able to review it and share it and fast forward through it. If you want to quickly put into the Q&A box, you can put the fact that you want to talk to Adam, and we will go through all the questions and make sure that we can connect you. So thank you very much, Adam. Thank you to all of you who have joined us tonight. Just a reminder that we're doing this webinar again next Sunday, different topics. So I just look out for the emails. We'll send out an email reminder. Feel free to join as you did tonight. Some people stayed throughout the entire webinar. Sometimes people came and went. You're free to come and go as you want, and hopefully you will find some more good information from other presenters and other topics. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good week. Be well, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Shavua Tov.
Bye-bye.